Together, we will make America great again.
RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back. Yes, to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Hope you guys are having a lovely day. Thank you very much for joining us. If you've been hanging out in the chat and you haven't yet done so, give us a little assist by hitting that like button, hitting the red pill, helping us out by sharing the show. I really do appreciate it. Whether you're out there over on Rumble or Pilled or Getter or X or even YouTube, thanks for hanging out with us. All right, well, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Wait a second. Is X not working? It says that it's working. Oh, it's not quite 5 o'clock yet. How did I do that? I somehow mistimed. Oh my God, I started the show 5 minutes early. What am I doing? I was acting like it was the old introduction and not the new introduction. Okay. Well, we're going to be about 5 minutes ahead of schedule, and the X stream is not going to start until 5 o'clock exactly. All right, well, those leftist protesters, those leftist agitators, those paid professionals hanging out in front of ICE, hanging out in front of the courthouse, hanging out. I am 5 minutes into the future. Hanging out on the streets of Minneapolis in the no-go zones, in the autonomous zones. They are finding out. They wanted to French around, and they are now finding out. I love it. All right, so do me a favor, sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because we're going to get into it right about now. All right, so I guess the real question is, should I kill 3 minutes and just hang out and talk with you guys in the chat? Because I feel bad. I feel like the folks over there on X are going to feel like they're missing out on something, because they're not going to have the full complement, the entire show as I have put it together today. Because believe it or not, there is a method to the madness, and I hate it when somebody misses out. Let me just say this. Thank you very much to everybody who watched the program from yesterday. It's got over 100,000 views over on Rumble. I think it's up to like 102,000. Now, generally speaking, like the most views I get on a show over on Rumble are going to be somewhere around, between 50 and 75,000. So to see that in one day hit 100,000, I thought that was pretty sweet. Thank you so much to Freedom76, it looks like, for dropping those subscriptions for the people over there on Rumble. I really do appreciate it. G. Fontez, I'm doing well. I had a chiropractic appointment this morning, and the doctor did these electromuscle stimulation. It's kind of like a TENS machine, but the TENS is like way higher frequency than what it is you could get at home. So you basically, they turn it up and they just keep going higher and higher and higher, and then you're like, okay, that's good. You should probably stop there. And what it does is it gradually raises and then lowers in intensity, and it feels like it's going up your entire back. So that really helped. And then they also have the most intense and therapeutic massage machines, which also have heat and infrared light. So they use that on you as well. And I left feeling significantly better. And I'm also obviously wearing a couple of homeopathic remedies, and then I have a patch on my back as well. So yes, the electromuscular stimulation definitely did help. I enjoyed that. Thank you very much, Griselda. Appreciate it. And also, I should probably say thank you so much to Miss Echo, who says, my daily news fix. Let's go. LFG, we are on the case. Trump One says, happy Friday. Thank you very much to Trump One. All right, we have almost successfully made it to the 5 o'clock hour so that I can go ahead and hit refresh over there on X, and any moment now, it should be good. Just looking over here. Waylon Jennings, you like the shirt? Yeah, this is my retro rifle Jurassic shirt. I guess it's a T-Rex with, what kind of guns are they? It's just some kind of random AR-15. And then of course, obviously the designs and stuff. Love that. Okay, so it is now 5 o'clock. We are now live over on X, or we should be, because it is 5 o'clock on my clock, but maybe X. Okay. Looks like X should be working. No, now it says the broadcast has ended. What is this cruel joke that they are playing on me here? Yeah, it looks like it ended after 26 seconds. No, what the heck? Let me do one more refresh and see if it works. Okay. All right, everything's good to go. All right, guys, we're going to start today with our daily check-in on the status of silver. All right, so there's a lot of people out there predicting that, as I said the other day, where we're at right now is nowhere near the ceiling. A lot of people are predicting $300 an ounce for silver. As I told you yesterday, currently banks like Citibank and Bank of America, they both have short positions that they're currently holding on silver. Those short positions right now, if they have to pay them out, are going to be worth $4.4 billion. And the industrial demand for silver currently eats up 60% of the annual supply. So if those short positions are called and people want physical metal, then the banks would need 5.5 years worth of every single ounce of silver minted in the last 5.5 years just to cover those physical positions. So that is an impossibility. That's not something that anybody's going to be able to do. I'm also hearing that there are a lot of local dealers, pawn shops, precious metals dealers, who are finding themselves with a bit of a cash flow problem because they simply don't have enough money to purchase silver at spot. And so they are offering quite a bit lower than spot for both gold and silver. Now, your average pawn shop is going to do that anyways, but there are a lot of places who are pretty reputable where you can get as close to spot as possible because they're going to turn around and they're going to sell it for spot, actually. So you simply cannot cover all of the silver paper that is out there unless you pull back every single ounce that was minted over the last 5.5 years, minted and mined rather. But the solar panels that take silver, the electronics that take silver, the industrial uses that require silver to continue pumping out, they're not stopping. The silver that they have is in their inventory, but they have to buy more every single day. So they have this industrial pipeline, and all of that silver is already spoken for, which means that the short positions are permanently stuck. There is no way that those positions can be covered. And because you have this negative feedback loop, it essentially continues to push prices higher. Everything becomes more expensive. Every single piece of silver out there becomes more and more desirable. And then the urgency that these people have, because banks don't want to lose their entire ball of wax, they are willing to perhaps pay more and more. Of course, they do not want to go out on those short positions because that would be the worst possible scenario. It's basically a structural doom loop. And CME keeps hiking margins because they want to shake out the long positions. Bank of America and Citibank are continually suppressing paper prices on COMEX. But that does not create physical silver. All it does is try to keep the price down on the paper, which is all imaginary. So this is right now the most dangerous spot that anybody in these positions could be in. Physical silver is trading at all-time highs. It is going to continue to trade at all-time highs. And the moment that any large buyers with these long positions demand actual delivery of physical silver, the entire system is going to break. I've heard rumors that banks are perhaps thinking about not giving physical silver, about telling those people the only thing we can do is to give you the cash value equivalent because the silver obviously doesn't exist. So, in addition to that, gold has just surpassed the US dollar for the first time in 30 years. Essentially, the de-dollarization that many people have predicted would happen for many, many years is beginning to happen. Seems that many nations, rather than holding U.S. Treasury bonds, are rather in favor of purchasing physical gold instead. Foreign countries are really not caring about the small amount of interest that they can earn on those Treasury bonds because you take a look at gold and it's up 173% year over year. They're also worried about losing their principal if something tragic was to happen to the U.S. dollar. U.S. Treasuries can also be seized, or inflation can push their value to essentially nothing. But gold has no risk. The only thing that you can do with gold is sell it to get more money, and you hold on to it, and it continues to achieve value. The other really awful part about this, and we can talk to Congress because this is their fault, U.S. debt is rising by $1 trillion every 100 days. And simply the interest payments on our debt are passing over $1 trillion per year. So the only thing that the Fed can do is to print more money. And then that, of course, debases the value of the currency. So that's why these nations are getting out. That's why gold is now a much more promising asset to hold on to than U.S. Treasuries. And then don't forget about BRICS. BRICS is still out there. The BRICS nations are continuing with their plan for financial global domination. This is, at the end of the day, the total de-dollarization of U.S. money. And the only way that I can see that we can ensure that we have stability in the financial markets here in the United States is to finally go back to the gold and silver standard. It doesn't have to just be the gold standard. It doesn't just have to be the silver standard. You know, President Trump just signed an executive order the other day having to do with the mining of minerals and the creation of a number of different pipelines here in the United States so that we can get off the dependency of many different minerals that are mined by other nations. If we are doing all of that here, if we are processing all of that here, then we have our own destiny in our hands. If we tie the U.S. dollar to a portfolio, if you will, of precious metals, then that would be a much better way to instill confidence in the dollar for not only the people of the United States, it also might drastically change prices in a good way for product here in the United States. And it could mean that the dollars that you're holding right now could become much, much, much more valuable. So we'll go ahead and wait to see how this goes, but I am having such a good time following the precious metals markets in the last couple of weeks. I want to say thank you also to PJW. PJW over on Rumble says, I haven't been to a live show in a while, but I still love you, Zach. I'm in J.R. Majewski's old pool buddy here in Northwest Ohio, supporting you. Hello, Mrs. Zach. PJW, thank you very much, my friend. Even though you're not here live, I hope that you're still enjoying the show, and thank you very much for that support. I really appreciate it. So Be Happy 731 says, what happened to auditing Fort Knox? Well, that hasn't happened. The only way that can happen is through an act of Congress, and apparently everybody lost their balls. There is a lot of other things that they're paying attention to right now, namely finishing up these financial resolutions to make sure that the government is funded for the next year. But at the same time, they're also loading on all kinds of pork and things that the United States citizens do not want to pay for, as we talked about yesterday with the National Endowment for Democracy, or for funneling money to different nations overseas, just not the kind of thing that we want to have to deal with. Now, I'd also like to point to a next step in the planned phase for peace in the Gaza Strip. President Trump, many months ago, had announced the Gaza Riviera, if you will. And during that time, a lot of people kind of forgot about it, but it was all happening in the background. But it was announced yesterday that the International Transitional Board of Peace, which is meant to supervise the governance of Gaza, has now been formed. Now, President Trump had announced that it would be headed and chaired by himself and it was all part of his 20-point peace plan for Gaza that was revealed last September. So he said, I can say with certainty that it is the greatest and most prestigious board ever assembled at any time, any place. I love President Trump's phrasing on things. He's like, it's always the best. It's always the greatest. It's always the most prestigious. And if he's a part of it, I don't see how he can actually be wrong. All right. So the full statement is, it is with my great honor to announce the Board of Peace has been formed. The members of the board will be announced shortly, but I can say with certainty it's the best. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, Steve Witkoff, who is the special envoy for President Trump, he's basically been the deal maker and the peacemaker extraordinaire. He announced the launch of phase 2 of the peace plan. This is the part where Gaza is going to be redeveloped for the benefit of the Gaza people who have, of course, suffered through many, many years of tragedy and strife. And it will, of course, not be a situation where the United States is there governing and deciding what happens. This is largely going to be run not only by this peace board, the Gaza board, but it will also, on the ground, be run by Middle Eastern nations who are from the region. There's also going to have to be these nations with a physical military presence on the ground inside the Gaza Strip. And so there is a possibility for flashpoints to pop off if Israel decides that they get itchy trigger fingers. So we'll have to see what happens. Now, he also announced that Phase 2 establishes a transitional technocratic Palestinian administration in Gaza, the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, and begins the full demilitarization and reconstruction of Gaza, primarily the disarmament of all unauthorized personnel. The U.S. expects Hamas to fully comply with its obligations, including the immediate return of the final deceased hostage. Failure to do so will bring serious consequences. Now, Witkoff, of course, is probably going to have a large role to play in this. But since the ceasefire, there have been ample record levels of humanitarian aid that have been delivered to the people of Gaza. The United Nations has also had a part to play, but they said that the United States with this mission has been doing better than they've ever done. And the newly appointed Palestinian technocratic government will fully oversee the implementation of new measures to give the Palestinian people some dignity and a place to live in the near future. Now, those Muslim nations that I mentioned, Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar, they're going to be instrumental in securing the demilitarization agreement with Hamas. That will include the surrender of all weapons, the dismantling of every tunnel that currently exists, and, of course, the return of that final hostage. So I think things are going rather well over in Gaza. I mean, considering the way this conflict has been fought over the several decades preceding the peace deal, I'd say President Trump has done what many people at one time thought was absolutely unthinkable. So you got to give him a big cheers for that one. Now, I would also like to play the video that I was unable to play for you guys yesterday. This is President Trump's announcement of the new health care bill, which Congress is also working on.
Today, I'm thrilled.
And let me just say this. It's not like they're just talking about it. This is going to be voted on, and I'm fairly certain this will be implemented.
To announce my plan to lower healthcare prices for all Americans and truly make healthcare affordable again. We're doing things that nobody's ever been able to do. We're calling it the Great Healthcare Plan. Instead of putting the needs of big corporations and special interests first, our plan finally puts you first and puts more money in your pocket. The government is going to pay the money directly to you. It goes to you, and then you take the money and buy your own health care. Nobody's ever heard of that before, and that's the way it is. The big insurance companies lose, and the people of our country win. This proposal locks in the massive discounts on prescription drugs that my administration is achieving through our most favored nation drug pricing agreement. Now, when you hear about that, for 40 years they've been trying to do it, but they never were able to do it. No other president was able to do it. I got every other country to approve it by the use of tariffs and other things. they all approved it. Nobody else got it. No other president.
Namely, those big golden balls he sets on the table when he goes in to negotiate.
President got it, and for the most part, they didn't even try because they felt it was impossible. It'll bring down drug prices 80, 90%, in some cases, just numbers that nobody's ever heard of before. Your prescription drugs will come way, way down. And under this policy, the prices of many drugs will be slashed by 300, 400, and even 500% starting this month at the TrumpRx.gov. So instead of Americans paying the highest drug prices in the world, which we have for decades, we will now be paying the lowest cost paid by any other nation. So any other nation that's paying the lowest cost, that's what we're going to pay. And the American people will get the savings. So I have to reiterate, the lowest price in the world is what you're going to pay. Before, you were paying the highest price in the world by far, and the politicians did nothing about it.
All right, so I see a couple of comments or questions in the chat. People are asking if this is going to replace Medicare, Medicaid. No, it will be in addition to that. It will be money given to us to use for our health care. It is not reserved explicitly to purchase insurance. Because I also see that, somebody had said, how can anybody trust the American death care system? I'm fully with you. I'm totally on board. So I don't have insurance, but I am going to the chiropractor several times a month. That's $55 a shot. That gets expensive. It's not as expensive as my insurance was every single month, but if I can save $250 a month, I would really like to do that. So theoretically, I could use this, or I could make perhaps a purchase of joining like a healthcare consortium, which is like a group of like-minded people who have access to certain doctors that are based and that are not going to try to make sure that you take your statins and your jabs and all of that stuff. So it gives you total freedom over your health care. Now, the other thing about this is that the Affordable Care Act still remains. Like, Obamacare is still there. So if the liberals want to go buy through Obamacare and get raked over the coals, they can go ahead and do that. You don't have to. There will actually be a Trump health market where you can go buy plans through somebody else, through President Trump's plan. And I also know that they are working to specifically put pressure on the healthcare insurance companies to bring the cost of healthcare down. And that includes like healthcare systems like hospitals, because since the introduction of the Affordable Care Act, insurance healthcare costs across the board have increased by 96%. 96%. Now, what I would really like to see the government do, in the same way that Congress has like the world's best pension plan, why don't they roll Social Security into that plan? Just give everybody that plan, because they also have like the world's greatest health insurance plan. Why don't they just give everybody in America who's an American citizen that exact same healthcare plan? Why don't they do that? They could very easily simplify it, because if the idea is that you are getting a better deal because you have more people who are buying from the same pool of providers, why don't they just do that exact same thing for the people of the United States? They take all the Social Security money, they put it into the same pension plan that is making buku bucks for the former senators, and will it cover holistic doctors? It is your money to use on your health care. As far as I know, there is no restriction on what doctors you can go to. So that's the thing. It is money paid to you instead of being paid to an insurance company of your choice, and you can use it to pay for health care in the way that you want.
So I'm asking Congress to complete the work that we've started. Next, my plan would reduce your insurance premiums by stopping government payoffs to big insurance companies and sending that money directly to the people. Obamacare was designed to make insurance companies rich. I call it the Unaffordable Care Act, with billions of dollars in taxpayer subsidies that helped their stock prices skyrocket over 1,700% as you paid more money for health care every single year, more and more. The premiums went higher and higher. I want to end this flagrant scam and put extra money straight into the healthcare savings account in your name, and you go out and buy your own health care. and you'll make a great deal. You get better health care for less money. That way you can choose the care that is right for your family. To further reduce insurance premiums, my plan ends the giant kickbacks to insurance brokers and corporate middlemen that only drive up the costs, and that's what they're intended to do, drive up the cost. But we're driving down the cost. And it fully funds a long neglected part of the law known as the Cost Sharing Reduction Program. This measure alone should cut premiums on the most popular Obamacare plans. It's hard to believe there are any because it's a hated program. It's unaffordable, but it's going to cut them by an average of 10 to 15%. Next, the Great Healthcare Plan. That's the name. It's called the Great Healthcare because it's great healthcare at a lower price. Mandates unprecedented accountability and transparency from insurance companies and all healthcare providers so that special interests can no longer profiteer at your expense. As the saying goes, sunlight is the best disinfectant. That is why my plan orders all insurance companies to publish rate and coverage comparisons in very plain English. It requires insurers to publish detailed information about how much of your money they're going to be paying out in claims versus how much they're taking in profits. In other words, you will be able to watch the scam. It forces them to release detailed data.
Yeah, CNS. So President Trump said it goes into your health savings account. So that health savings account is available for you to purchase health care of any kind, okay? So you can use it if you go to the doctor and you don't have health insurance. You can use it to go to the dentist. You can use it to buy medical supplies. You can use it to go to, all manner of healthcare providers. If there is some specific restriction on, a type of doctor or a specialist or something like that, I can't imagine that they would, given that the whole point is to put the healthcare into the hands of you. Then obviously they would go ahead and say that. Now, I could only imagine that the restrictions would only be through certain insurance providers because, of course, they have doctors that are part of their network, and so they're not going to cover certain things.
On how many claims are being denied and whether those denials are eventually overturned on appeal. And most importantly, it will require any hospital or insurer who accepts Medicare or Medicaid to prominently post all prices at their place of business so that you are never surprised and you can easily shop for a better deal or better care. And you're going to end up doing both. You're going to get a better deal and better care. We will have maximum price transparency and costs will come down incredibly.
All right. Can you imagine, like, these insurers are charging ridiculous amounts of money? If they have to tell you how much profit they're getting, that's going to be an uncomfortable conversation. They're not going to want to do that. So this will automatically bring prices down. Filter Dog says, free us from the insurance tyranny. Absolutely. Doodah Man says, we try to catch the news you provide every day and truly appreciate all that you do. Much love. Peace. Peace to you, my brother from another mother. Candelicious, thank you very much for the can. And Jill, 2020, thank you. She says, great show. I appreciate you. All right, real quick. Want to tell you about a special friend over here on a Rumble. This is something I've been working on myself. You guys ever have one of those months where an F-bomb is absolutely justified, but you don't feel like blowing up your entire life today? Yeah, that moment. That's why this exists. It's called an F-bomb jar. You drop one silently, no yelling, no consequences, all of the impact with none of the fallout. Deploy responsibly, or don't. We won't judge you. But you'll see it on screen. Scan the QR code or click the link below. Use the code RUMBLE10 for 10% off your entire order at thingsofholding.com to get yourself an F-bomb jar. Thank you very much to Rumble, and thank you to F-bomb jars. Okay. Now, earlier today, the Nobel Committee was up in arms because President Trump received a special visit from Maria Conchita Alonso, or whatever her name is. She was the woman who won the Nobel Peace Prize in his instead of President Trump. Maria Corina Machado. That's how you say it. She was awarded the Peace Prize for working, I guess, for freedom in Venezuela. But she, in my opinion, she's kind of like a CIA cutout. I think it's one of the reasons that President Trump hasn't said, like, we're going to install her as president of Venezuela. But she stopped by the White House. She had a meeting with President Trump. She showed up. It was kind of funny. She had to go in through the visitor's entrance, through like the regular tourist entrance, and she had to sign in, and nobody from the White House came. I'm sorry. Nobody from the White House came out to greet her. And she brought like a framed, it was a custom framed display of her Nobel Peace Prize with like an award, presenting it to President Trump. She gave it to him. They, shook hands, and he had a nice conversation with her. This is the woman who he said she doesn't have the support in Venezuela. That's why we're not going to put her in power. Now, he is, however, supporting Delcy Rodriguez, who was the vice president to Maduro. And interestingly enough, I don't remember if I've ever said this, but Rodriguez and Maduro's son, in the wake of the extraction, they both said that they were implementing a plan that Maduro approved, which in my mind kind of backs up my assertion that Maduro was extracted rather than simply being kidnapped and deposed. But one of the big arguments about the action in Venezuela has been the concept of whether or not it's a regime change. From the very beginning, I've said, having lived through several U.S. regime changes in my lifetime, this is not a regime change, because a regime change is not simply changing out leadership of one individual. A regime change is when you go in, you forcibly remove the entire government, and then you throw in people who truthfully don't have the knowledge or capability to run a government. And that's why regime changes are bad, because they always end up bad, because we had the quagmire in Iraq and Afghanistan. Nobody ever trusted Hamid Karzai. That dude was stealing all the money that we were sending over there. L. Paul Bremer, the buddy of George W. Bush and also a survivor of 9/11. Remember, he was working at Marsh McLennan, and on the day of 9/11, he was supposed to have a meeting in one of the buildings so that he could learn about how people at Marsh McLennan were using a back door to illegally move money out and keep it off books. And then they had the guy who found it scheduled to give this presentation, and then without telling him, they moved the meeting across the street. Well, thank God, Richard Grove, the man who discovered it, he was caught in traffic on 9/11, and he saw the planes go into the building, so he didn't die. And anyways, L. Paul Bremer was awarded. He was turned into the provincial governor of Iraq. President Trump discusses this very thing. The reason he's not putting Machado in there is because she wasn't in the government. She didn't have the support. She didn't have the respect. They are not going in there and replacing everybody, because when you do that, it inevitably leads to a bad situation.
Why align with Delcy Rodriguez and the remnants of the Maduro regime and not with Machado, who has the support of the Venezuelan people?
Well, if you ever remember a place called Iraq where everybody was fired, every single person, the police, the generals, everybody was fired, and they ended up being ISIS. Instead of just getting down to business, they ended up being ISIS. So I remember that. But I'll tell you, I had a great meeting yesterday by a person who I have a lot of respect for, and she has respect, obviously, for me and our country. And she gave me her Nobel Prize. But I'll tell you what, I got to know her. I never met her before, and I was very, very impressed. She's this is a fine woman.
And I'm sure she is. She's probably very intelligent. She's probably very nice. And for her to give President Trump her Nobel Prize, obviously that must say something. But we didn't do a regime change. We simply shuffled the deck a little bit. And many of those people in that shuffle were aware of the plan that was taking place. Now, I would like to put on blast a Democrat mayor from Missouri. This man, well, he is still the mayor of Riverview, Missouri, probably not for much longer. His name is Mayor Michael Cornell Jr. He is a far-left race baiter, BLM supporter. This Missouri town has less than 2,400 people, and he was just busted for 9 incredibly heinous charges against children. And for perpetrating a race hoax. So this was first reported by First Alert for News. Riverview Mayor Mike Cornell Jr. has been charged with 4 counts of second-degree statutory sodomy, 3 counts of first-degree sodomy, and attempted sodomy, 1 count of first-degree harassment, and 1 count of possession of child pornography. Now, there were 4 victims involved in these incidents, and that included 2 minors under the age of 17. These alleged crimes occurred between December 2016 and 2026. Now, according to the St. Louis County Police's probable cause statement, Cornell committed forcible sexual acts on at least 3 victims, including a minor. They say he made sexual advances against a 4th victim, and police say they found child sexual abuse material on Cornell's phone. The department said it was made aware of these allegations against Cornell and potential crimes from another local agency, but would not say who. What's also interesting is that sometime last year, someone on X made a kind of offhanded comment, someone who knew the mayor directly, insinuating that he was a pedo. Rather than going online and perhaps defending himself, he used his power as mayor to have that individual subpoenaed so that he could essentially commit acts of lawfare against them to scare them from going out and speaking publicly. Like he went after him for harassment and for defamation or something like that. So the charges are following the authority search of the mayor's home earlier this month. Police showed up accompanied by a canine unit. They searched his entire residence. It's less than a half mile from Riverview City Hall. The acting police chief is a young man by the name of Torian Times. He called the charges against Cornell Jr. deeply disturbing. Yes, they are. St. Louis police also believe they may have found even more victims of Cornell Jr., and they're encouraging everybody to come forward. It was just last month when Cornell Jr. whipped out the race card and alleged without evidence that pro-KKK and anti-Semitic graffiti had begun appearing throughout Riverview, the town in which he is the mayor. First Alert 4 investigated the claims made by the mayor, and they found a number of inconsistencies across the various versions of the stories that he told. For example, the outlet did not find evidence of Cornell's claims of the KKK or any other organized hate group drawing any graffiti in Riverview. And that's stunning because generally speaking, when you find some graffiti, you're going to find 1 or 2 racial epithets there. Now, also current and former residents have spoken out and said that there's no history of the KKK in this community. So in other words, the whole thing is a giant hoax, and it makes this lie even more disgusting is the fact that Riverview is a city which is 73% black. Cornell Jr. was apparently attempting to incite some support for himself, likely in advance of this heinous crime being admitted to the public. I'd like to see if there is... Yes, we do have video. After we get past this short commercial.
Mayor of a small North County town is now charged with multiple sex crimes. This comes after our team has spent over a month digging into the mayor. We are talking about Mike.
All right. I see a lot of different possible punishments here. I think a large wooden mallet would be totally appropriate.
Cornell Jr., the mayor of Riverview. He's facing multiple counts, including statutory sodomy and possession of child pornography. Our Kimberly Donahue is in studio for us tonight, hearing from police, Kim, and the county prosecutor about this case.
Morgan, our team has been looking into concerning claims about Riverview government for the past month. Today's developments are something county officials describe as deeply disturbing and are looking to get justice for all those affected.
When you have somebody that's in a position of authority who is able to somewhat use that position of authority to abuse other people, obviously it's traumatic and devastating.
Choice words from the St. Louis County Police Department following the arrest of Riverview Mayor Mike Cornell Jr. Thursday. He's charged with 9 crimes. Most are sexual in nature.
To every victim, we want you to know that there is no shame in the crimes that were perpetrated against you. The only person that should feel shame in this situation is Mr. Cornell.
St. Louis County Police say Cornell was arrested during a traffic stop in Riverview. The St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney's Office charged him with 4 counts of second-degree statutory sodomy, 3 counts of first-degree sodomy or attempted sodomy, 1 count of first-degree harassment, and 1 count of possession of child pornography. Officials say the investigation began in December when a victim came forward to a local law enforcement agency, and the allegations date back to 2016. The investigation focuses on 4 victims, including minors. St. Louis County authorities confirmed that previous police activity at Riverview City Hall on January 2nd was tied to this investigation.
Our biggest concern is that there may be additional victims during this time frame I listed or even before. This is a call to any potential victims. Your voice matters. If you are a victim or you know someone who is, please come forward.
First Alert 4 has been investigating Mayor Mike Cornell and the city of Riverview since he claimed the KKK was active in his community in December. We have not found any evidence of these claims outside of the statement made by the mayor. First Alert 4 has heard from Riverview community members about concerning behavior from Mayor Mike Cornell before the arrest. Officials believe Cornell abused his position of power to lure victims.
To those of us that are in positions of authority, when we abuse that position of authority, it ruins the trust that the public has placed in us. And situations like this, unfortunately, tear down that fabric of trust.
Following today's news, the current leader of Riverview Police sharing a statement with our team saying, quote, "I want the city of Riverview to know the police department stands with the residents of this community and the victims of these heinous."
The victims of these heinous acts. Terrible, terrible stuff. But the good news is he's being caught and he's not going to be able to harm or victimize anybody else in the future. Sober in stilettos. Good to see you, Zach. Thank you for all you do for this movement. My hubs calls you my dinner time prep boyfriend. All kidding aside, thank you, and thank Lisa for tolerating all the work he does to bring us news. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Say hello to your husband for me. All right, now, here is a very interesting story. We have yet another incidence of an activist judge attempting to stop President Trump and the administration from doing what the American people want him to do. Yet again, another activist judge makes a ruling from the federal bench. This time it's Judge David O. Carter. You may have heard that name before. He is a Clinton-appointed judge. He has previously made headlines by claiming that President Trump likely committed crimes during the 2020 election challenges. Isn't that funny? Because it was just determined that people who are running for office have the right to challenge the election. Wow, President Trump didn't commit any crimes, likely or otherwise. So he's now moving to block the Department of Justice from securing election integrity in California. He issued a letter dismissing the DOJ's lawsuit against the Secretary of State of California, Shirley Weber, and effectively is attempting to shield the state's voter rolls from federal scrutiny. Judge Carter granted all of the motions by the state of California to dismiss, ruling that the DOJ's request violated the Civil Rights Act of 1960, the National Voter Registration Act, and the Help America Vote Act. What's so ironic is that the information that the Department of Justice is requesting is to verify compliance with those very laws that he stipulates in his decision, barring them from gaining access to them. He even went on to accuse the executive branch of trying to usurp the authority over elections. Now, the DOJ had sued California, looking to achieve a handling of unredacted voting records. This way, they could ensure compliance of federal election laws, as stated. But Carter says absolutely not. He says the government's request is unprecedented and illegal. Let me also remind you that states like California, Georgia, Wisconsin, and many others were handing over all kinds of voter information to organizations like ERIC so that they could keep an active tracking of who was voting, where ballots could be harvested from, and exactly how many votes they needed if they wanted to push their candidate over the edge on election night. Why is it illegal and perfectly permissible for a private organization to take a look at my election information when the federal government, who already has all of my information, is illegally barred from doing so? So the 14 states that the DOJ has sued and they are refusing to provide their full statewide voter registration files are ones you may expect: California, Delaware, Maine, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, New Hampshire, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington. Now, the Department of Justice has launched this legal battle because we need to maintain voter rolls. We need to ensure that they are being cleaned on a regular basis. And we need to make sure that there aren't people casting ballots for ghost voters, for people who can't possibly live in a location because it's a UPS mailbox or because it's an empty lot, or that dead people aren't on the voter rolls like we already know they are in the state of Michigan. I'm sure that every state has got problems like that. But instead of allowing the transparency that the American people have demanded, and the reason we elected Donald Trump was to try to fix our failed and broken election system, Judge Carter sides with California and the radical left. He characterized the DOJ's attempt to verify voter eligibility as a nefarious plot to abridge the right of many Americans to cast their ballots. Judge Carter, if you are an American citizen and you're registered to vote, and your information is up to date, the DOJ isn't going to be able to do anything to abridge your right to vote. The only people that this may abridge their ability to vote is dead people, ghost voters, illegal aliens, none of which have the right to vote. He also hysterically claimed that the DOJ seeks an unprecedented amount of personal information related to California voters. Again, the DOJ theoretically, or the administration theoretically, in one form or another, already has all of the personal information for every living human being, and also the previously dead ones, and argued that the federal government is trying to centralize the private information of all Americans. He wrote in his opinion, the DOJ cannot go beyond the boundaries provided by Congress and use these legislative tools in a manner that wholly disregards the separation of powers provided in the Constitution. It is Congress and their role to determine the purpose and use of legislation. Should Congress want to enable the executive to centralize private information of all Americans within the executive branch, Congress will have to clearly say so. There is an inherent level of trust that comes along with Americans voting locally. That is why, since the founding of our nation, the Elections Clause has constitutionally prevented the centralization of election management in the executive by affording states the power to determine the time, place, and manner of holding elections. The time, place, and manner of holding elections is one thing, but verifying compliance with a federal law would certainly be within the purview of the federal government. State-run elections, he continues, means that voters recognize their neighbors who staff polling stations and trust their secretaries of state, whom they voted for, to keep them personally identifying information safe and believe that they will not be targeted because of what they look like or who they vote for. No one is suggesting that they will be. All we're trying to do is ensure that these states are maintaining their voter rolls. So the DOJ's request, he says, for the sensitive information of Californians stands to have a chilling effect on American citizens, more likely a chilling effect on illegal aliens. But he says political minority groups and working class immigrants who may consider not registering to vote or skip casting a ballot because they are worried about how their information will be used. But they'll sign up for welfare benefits and give all of their personal identifying information. Nobody's worried about how it's going to be used in that regard. Anyways, there cannot be unbridled consolidation of all elections power in the executive without action from Congress and public debate. So get off your asses, Congress, and do it, because that is exactly what we're asking for. We need to have a central point of accountability. The states can continue to decide the date the elections happen, the very means by which they take place, barring several methods of voting that I think should be totally outlawed. But he says this is antithetical to the promise of free and fair elections, our country promises, and the franchise that civil rights leaders fought and died for. None of that is true. This is the same judge who actually presided over the John Eastman case, and this was in regards to the January 6th committee subpoenas. Carter, again, said that Trump more likely than not committed a crime by attempting to challenge the very questionable results of the 2020 election. The Supreme Court has now decided that Carter was wrong when he said that. So, continuing, we now have a price on the purchase of Greenland. Apparently, Marco Rubio is set to make an offer of somewhere around $700 billion. Congressman Randy Fine, who I am not particularly fond of, although he is a Republican, has also just submitted a bill which would annex Greenland for the United States of America. Of course, that bill will have to make it through both the House and the Senate. I don't know how likely that is. But the idea of purchasing Greenland, $700 billion, the return on that purchase would be far greater than that. So we, as we stated earlier this week, now have this working group that's being formed between Denmark, Greenland, and the United States of America. And President Trump has been openly speaking about the need for cooperation with NATO as well. If we were to acquire Greenland, then obviously our participation in NATO would make that acquisition far more valuable in terms of security and protection for those nations. You have about 800,000 square miles on Greenland. We also currently have military bases there. The main military base on Greenland, we have just begun the process of upgrading. So no matter how we are participating in this deal with Greenland and Denmark, the United States of America already has a position of strength there. I think we probably have more infrastructure on Greenland than Denmark does in any sense. The European nations who are aligned with Denmark and who potentially don't want us to get our hands on Greenland have also just announced that they are sending troops to Greenland. It's a handful of troops. I think like the most any country is sending to Greenland is like France, and they're sending 12. I think that Germany might be sending 5. So not much of a show of force at all. This is a fairly high priority for President Trump. This is definitely something that he wants. Now, another way that we can put pressure on those European nations who may want to stand in our way of getting Greenland into our possession is the use of tariffs, as President Trump has shown in the past.
Another, I called Germany. No, we will not do that. I said, no, we're going to put a 25% tariff, which is, by the way, about 7 times more than they would have to pay by raising their drug, like 7 times. This wasn't like a little bit more, 7 times more. And I may do that for Greenland, too. I may put a tariff on countries if they don't go along with Greenland, because we need Greenland for national security. So I may do that. I'll give you a little. I'll take you out of that. In fact, that'll end up being the story. But actually, this is a much bigger story because we're reducing healthcare by numbers that you haven't seen.
So just imagine that if a nation wants to stand in the way of the United States and actively try to hamper our ability to acquire Greenland, we can just go ahead and throw another 25% tariff on them, and that would be it. Now, in relation to that story, the arguments before the Supreme Court on the tariff case have been made. And it looks like the White House is confirming that it appears to them that the Supreme Court is planning to uphold President Trump's tariff plan, which means that the $700 billion we would inevitably pay for Greenland probably going to come from that. Take a listen.
Well, we're highly confident that they're going to side with us, that the legal analysis is on our side. And, we've talked about that on your show before, so I won't have to go into the details of that. But we also have a backup plan that's really solid. We can put a 10% tariff on right away to make up most of the room, and then use things like the 301 authorities, the 232 authorities to backfill the things that we've already achieved with these great deals with the countries. I expect that the Supreme Court is going to be really, really supportive of the president's plan, because look at all of the things that we've created this year. We've got a huge reduction in the deficit. We've got really, really high economic growth, and inflation is way down. If you look at the consumer price index, the last data that we saw showed the core over 3 months at an annual rate at only 1.6%. And so the idea that the tariffs would harm the economy and create inflation has been proven wrong by the data. And I think that the Supreme Court wouldn't want to upend all of that great success either.
All right. Now, one other way that we could potentially pay for Greenland is with the profits we're going to be making from the deals that we're doing now with Venezuela. President Trump also just announced today that when the people from Venezuela came and visited them at the White House, one of the things that they offered us off the top is 50 million barrels of oil. President Trump said, I didn't even ask anybody about it. I said, we'll take it. Just give it to us. I don't think that we're going to be paying for it. I think that they're just giving us 50 million barrels of oil, which is a street value of about $2.8 billion. Now, the Venezuelan oil refining has the ability to pump a lot of oil. And with the help of the United States, we'll be able to help them achieve the greatest possible pullout from the ground. Now, Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, of course, is one of those countries that I don't think wants us to have access to Greenland. Yesterday, he was visiting China. He was like the first Canadian Prime Minister in like a decade to visit China. And while he was there, he was trying to make trade deals. He also had a very interesting public comment that he made where he referred to the New World Order that is being created. Now, I want you to look at the guy to his right and the look on his face. This is very similar to what we saw with Jacob Fry and the police chief yesterday, when the police chief was not expecting Jacob Fry to say that the citizens of Minneapolis were asking the local Minneapolis police to fight ICE with them. He was like, hold on, bucko, that's not going to happen. But take a listen.
Mine is the first visit of a Canadian.
This guy right here.
Prime Minister to China in nearly a decade. The world has changed much since that last visit. And I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
Just see him, his neck just snapped. He was like, what? What'd you say, boss? Are you sure? Yeah, he was not too comfortable with that particular use of phrasing. But in this instance, I think that what Mark Carney is referring to is the new world order that President Trump is creating, which I don't like to use the term new world order because obviously there is a particular negative connotation to that. The new world order is the deep state world order. The Trump world order is the new global order that is created out of multipolar relations, a geopolitical web of sovereign states that are engaging in social and economic trade with each other so that everybody can have their own products. They can have their own deals that they're making. Everybody is going to be self-sufficient. And in those areas where they are deficient, they can make good deals with neighbors that are friendly to them. And through that restructuring into the Trump world order, if you will, it will bring about that lasting peace that President Trump has spoken about on so many occasions. The golden age, if you will. But certainly the use of phrase, the New World Order, is very controversial. And the man who was there with Mark Carney was very uncomfortable when he heard it. I thought that was hilarious. Patrick D35 says, I heard NATO was wanting to buy weapons from us to defend Greenland from a U.S. attack. That's exactly how it would go. I mean, where else are they going to buy weapons from? Sheikher13 says, I'm not able to watch live often, but you are my go-to for news. Thank you for all your coverage on Minnesota. Thank you very much for that generous donation. And of course, we've got plenty to talk about with regards to Minnesota today. And that's a wonderful transition because we are about to get into some protest talk. But before we head down, or rather up, to Minnesota, we've got to talk about my neck of the woods. Here in Jacksonville, a woman was given a rude awakening. She is an anti-ICE protester, and she punched a trooper, a Florida state trooper, in the face during an immigration enforcement operation earlier this week. Now, all of the law enforcement, largely, there are a couple of different departments who don't participate. But pretty much everybody down here, they're cool with handling immigration. They don't mind. They don't need to necessarily wait for ICE. If they see an illegal alien, they're like, that's illegal. We'll grab them, we'll hold them, and then we'll make sure that ICE knows when to come get them. So we have police body cam footage which shows the very moment this woman, who is identified as Jennifer Cruz of Jacksonville, Florida, tries to kick a female police officer after she punches this trooper in the face. She got thrown on the hood of the police car. She got cuffed. She was really, really nasty. Let's go ahead and pull this up. So here is Jennifer Cruz. She was covered by News4Jax, which is a local news station up there. And she was attempting to impede an immigration raid at Mi Pueblo grocery store. We're going to have to wait to get past this commercial real quickly. Oh, they just rocked her dome. Oh, man. Hang on, I want to watch that again. Boom! Did you see that bounce? That smile got wiped off her face real quick. Oh, my God, I love it. There's going to be a dent in that hood. Oh, man. And then there's actually footage from the back of the police cruiser as well. So she was following ICE agents around. They were with the state troopers. The troopers detained the driver. And so they obviously, what happened right there? Dang it. You know what? Okay, so I guess that the footage from inside the car, I must have that. That must be on X. But of course, Ron DeSantis, he wanted to get in on the action, and he said, Jennifer, I just got one thing to say for you. This is not Minneapolis. We play a different game down here in Florida. Now, obviously, we are a heavy Republican-leaning state. Ron DeSantis has overseen a massive shift in the voting demographic down here. That also largely had to do with the failure to adopt the sort of draconian COVID regulations that they had up north. Wasn't perfect down here, but it was a lot better than anywhere else. Certainly, I moved here because it was way better than Michigan. Let's go ahead and take a listen to Ron commenting.
I do know there was a woman who...
Hold on, I got to turn this up.
I do know there was a woman who came out and assaulted one of our troopers. Let me just tell you guys, this is not Minneapolis. That is not going to end well for you in Florida. You have a right to go out there and criticize government policy. You can go out there and protest within, obviously respected zones. But the idea that you're going to assault one of our troopers is unacceptable, and you are going to face consequences as a result of that.
Okay. And face the consequences she will. She's now going to be a felon. Let me see. Marilise asked to watch the guy next to Carney a little longer because his reactions continue for a minute. So that particular version of the clip ends right there. I have a longer version of the clip, but I would have to find it. All right. Now, there has been some action taking place in Minnesota today. We are going to get to that very specific action. But Tom Homan, he went on with Laura Ingraham last night, and he said, much like the ICE Watch website and the DHS Watch and all of the sort of social media stuff that Antifa does to try to dox ICE and their families, we're actually now going to be doing that to the exact same thing to all of the protesters that we are arresting. So he says we're going to be plastering their faces all over the place. We're also going to be calling their employers. We're going to be talking to their neighbors. We're going to be talking to their places of employment. We're going to be letting their schools know who they are. And if these people are taking time off of work to protest, we're going to make sure that their employers know exactly what they're doing.
People who want to, say follow ICE, and film ICE, you know what? You can protest. They have that right. But when you cross that line, and we've proven it, if you interfere or impede or assault an ICE officer, you will be prosecuted. And one thing I'm pushing for right now, Laura, we're going to create a database. Those people that are arrested for interference, impediment, assault, we're going to make them famous. We're going to put their face on TV. We're going to let their employers in their neighborhoods, in their schools, know who these people are. Because as you said, a lot of these people, they say they're taking time off work to protest. I bet you a lot of them are calling in sick. I bet you a lot of their employers don't know what they're doing. But we're going to make sure everybody knows who they are. We're going to broadcast. They want to broadcast the ICE officer that was nearly killed all over the internet. We're going to broadcast every one of these people we arrest. People who want.
Now, Tom Homan said yesterday that they were already mapping the network. Steve Miller said much the same. Every arrest gives them a greater understanding of exactly what this web of insurrection is actually made of. All of those connections, and remember, we can use various types of surveillance on these people here in the United States because they are now affiliated with transnational and domestic terrorist organizations. So we can look and we can see exactly who they are communicating with, exactly what means of communications they are using. We are also mapping the digital networks. We're mapping the money networks. And so this is going to be a highly successful operation. One such person I am hoping they're going to go ahead and look into is Maxwell Frost. He is a Democrat representative down here in Florida as well, and he's also a public member of Antifa. We're going to watch a video that Maxwell Frost put out, but before we do, very briefly, I just want to say one thing from our friends over here at Rumble. You guys, those banks can cancel your accounts. They can freeze your cards. They can decide what you're allowed to buy, what you're allowed to say, who you're allowed to support. Big banks and financial institutions have total control over your money, and they use it. And that's why financial independence matters more now than ever. So introducing Rumble Wallet. It's a wallet built for freedom. With Rumble Wallet, you control your money, not a bank, not a government, not a tech company. You can buy digital assets like Tether, Tether Gold, and Bitcoin all in one secure place with no permission, no middleman, no cancel button. And when you want to support the creators you actually believe in, you can use the Rumble Wallet app to directly tip that content creator. When you tip through the wallet, it goes straight into my wallet. Nobody takes a cut. It's secure, it's instant, and there is also no interference. It's not a credit line that they can shut off. It is your wallet permanently to protect for the future, to protect for your family. So when the system fails, when institutions turn on their own people, financial sovereignty is the difference between security and vulnerability. And Rumble Wallet's not about politics. It's about freedom, ownership, and protecting what's yours. So take control today. Download Rumble Wallet now and step away from the big banks for good. You'll get true ownership, true protection, and true financial freedom. You can use that QR code on screen. You can go to wallet.rumble.com, or you can just go to the App Store on your device. Thank you very much to them. All right, so let's get into this statement, which, in my opinion, is totally illegal, and it gives the government everything they need to start listening to the communications and monitoring the communications and the networks of Maxwell Frost, because in this video, he doxes the locations of ICE agents, and he warns of heavy ICE activity in Central Florida.
Hello, everybody. We've received multiple reports of heavy ICE activity in different parts of Central Florida, including the University of Central Florida, Winter Garden, Altamont Springs, and other surrounding areas. We've also received reports of heavy ICE activity at certain hotels in the area as well. I'm making this video to confirm both of those things, that ICE is in the community and that they have made pretty large hotel reservations in surrounding hotels as well. I want to tell you three things. Number one, please know your rights and ensure that your friends and family know their rights as well. We'll put a graphic at the end of this video and also post it again after this video. Number two, I am a member of the Oversight Committee of the United States government. And a few months ago, we launched a portal where people can report abuses and ICE activity. We'll put that link up as well. Please be vigilant and report anything that you see. And number three, we don't know everything, but my office will be working with local partners to investigate further on what's going on and also how it impacts you as well. Please stay safe, and remember, you have rights, no matter your immigration status. We're a community. Let's love each other and protect each other. God bless you.
This man is a cancer. This man is a cancer. And I guarantee you, he is doing illegal things outside of doxing the location of ICE. Now, another person whose network should totally be mapped is Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. Of course, Keith Ellison as well. Personally, I think that mapping has already taken place. Now, I say that because I think that the federal government very quickly is going to be doing exactly that, only they're going to be doing it publicly. Now, we've spoken about the Minneapolis and Minnesota state whistleblowers, the employees who worked at DHS, who for many years were trying to raise the alarm bells about what was happening in the welfare system about how all this fraud was taking place. We knew that they were in the process of becoming federal whistleblowers, and we knew that they were signing affidavits. Well, guess what? Those whistleblower reports, combined with the affidavits of their knowledge and the evidence that they had documented this fraud going back many years, and Tim Walz either retaliated or did nothing about it, is enough for prosecutions. And we're now getting word at Just the News that those indictments are imminent. Let's take a listen to John Sullivan, because he spoke with Tom Emmer, who is the number 3 in the House of Representatives, also a representative from the state of Minnesota, somebody who has a vested interest to make sure that everybody else ends up going to prison. Oh, please.
Big news that we got in the last 24 hours is that Tom Emmer, the number 3 member of the House, Republican leadership, he has confirmed on the record that congressional investigators are now have Minnesota state employees. We've known that there were these whistleblowers, these state legislators were talking to them. They've now become federal and congressional whistleblowers, and they're signing affidavits. And what Tom Emmer says is in the affidavits is people saying, I personally talked to the governor and his staff, Governor Tim Walz and his staff, and I told them about this fraud, told them it needed to be stopped, and they did nothing. They looked the other way. That is very significant. Now, Tom Emmer said, I think that's enough to bring criminal charges and to put the man in cuffs. Now, that is a very significant moment because Congress will take that testimony. It will make a criminal referral. And there is a U.S. attorney out in Minnesota, no glitz, no glamour, but they are rolling up indictments and they mean business. And it is very likely that Tim Walz will not only be hauled before Congress, but this evidence, if referred from Congress to the U.S. Attorney and the Justice Department, could result in Tim Walz becoming a subject or a target of the investigation. That's certainly what Tom Emmer thinks. Meanwhile, we're seeing the flow of money. It wasn't just Minnesota. So last week we talked about this, Steve, $700 million in suitcases flies out of Minnesota, often headed to either Amsterdam or Amsterdam to Dubai. It was a foreign.
So it's obviously one thing when you've got people coming forward and saying, I would like to testify before Congress. It's obviously one thing when strongly worded letters are delivered to the office of Tim Walz. It's obviously another thing when the Oversight Committee is holding hearings and asking questions. It's another thing entirely when the illegal actions of people like Tim Walz, Keith Ellison, Ilhan Omar, and others can be verified, can be validated, can be sworn to. All of those people who are signing affidavits, all of that will go to a grand jury. That grand jury will then be comprised likely of people in Minnesota who are probably not Somalians, who are regular Minnesota folk, and they're going to vote to indict Tim Walz, Keith Ellison, and Ilhan Omar. This is inevitable. This is what's happening. This is where it's going. Now, I'd like to show you before we continue with Minnesota, because we're going to talk a lot about the radical left and the paid protesters, what can happen to you if you do want to F around and find out. This is a kid from California who was caught in a protest rushing agents, and they shot a less than lethal round at him. He ended up getting shot in the eye. He lost his eye. They pulled a wad or a plug from that less than lethal round out of his eye, about the size of a nickel, embedded in his eye. It was pretty harrowing to see this kid get shot in the eye, because I can only imagine how much that must have hurt. Having that pulled out and all the fluid from your eye leaking out, absolutely awful. So, and he's a young man too. He didn't have to lose his eye. He made a bad decision, and in the blink of an eye, he doesn't have one. So this guy lost his left eye, and it was in Southern California. The demonstrators came up onto this plaza at the federal building. There was just a handful of agents there in riot gear. One of the protesters began moving in, and the officials start forcefully pushing the demonstrators back down the steps. But the group continues to advance. And then there is an orange cone that is thrown at the plaza. One of the officers begins firing munitions at the crowd. And this guy, 21-year-old Caden Rumler, ends up getting shot in the eye, and they pull him in and they arrest him, and then they end up needing to provide medical attention. Let's go ahead and watch, and you can see what happened, because there is literally 5 or 6 of these federal agents here. And so they think they've got their chance. Boom. Right in the face. And he's beside himself. Things could have been different, buddy. Let's see how he feels now that he got shot in the eye.
Well, can you tell us about your injuries now and the prognosis? Will you be blind in that eye for life?
From what I've heard the doctors say, and
Something tells me that's a girl who's on testosterone.
everyone else, yes, I will be blind for life. They said my globe was ruptured. I had my lower lid was cut up, and they had to take skin from my temple to fix it. There's a lot to it. I don't remember all the things that they said.
I have no sympathy for this individual because it never had to happen. Didn't need to go down like that. Now, another thing, heading back to Minnesota, this is in Eagan, Minnesota, at a hotel. Well, what they're doing, first of all, is they're going to hotels where they think ICE might be. And if people are driving SUVs, they are essentially claiming that these vehicles are ICE. They are vandalizing the vehicles. They're popping tires. They're spray painting them ICE. They're smashing out windows. Sometimes they're setting them on fire. But you can see here, there's no fewer there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 vehicles that are pictured here. You get punished because you're driving an SUV and you're parked at a hotel. God forbid you're not ICE and you're just there because you've got some business in Minneapolis. Here are some images of some of the people who are committing these acts of vandalism. This dude should probably not be too difficult to find when they start looking for him. Here's a slightly higher quality image of this kid. And President Trump was asked about the use of the Insurrection Act. Now, there has been a significant development since President Trump made this comment here. Basically, he said, I'll use it if we need it, but right now, it doesn't look like we need it. Let's take a listen.
What's the trigger for the Insurrection Act in Minnesota? What are you waiting for?
Well, the Insurrection Act, which has been used by 48% of the presidents as of this moment, the Insurrection Act also, if you look at it, I believe it was Bush, the elder Bush, he used it, I think, 28 times. It's been used a lot. And if I needed it, I'd use it. I don't think there's any reason right now to use it. But if I needed it, I'd use it. It's very powerful.
What's the trigger for the...
All right, so what would be a trigger for the Insurrection Act? Maybe an act of eco-terrorism, because that's what I think was just committed. A gas pipeline in Willow River, Minnesota, just blew up conveniently at the same time that ICE is there in Minnesota, in a number of different cities, doing these actions. You've got at least 2 different parts of the pipeline that appear to be on fire. Now, they put a lot of thought. They put a lot of thought and engineering into these pipelines. So there's redundancies, there are safeguards, there are things that are put in place to ensure that these things are not just going to spontaneously combust. So the idea for me that this happened in a vacuum, totally inconceivable. This is exactly the type of, quote, direct actions that left-wing terrorists like those in Antifa and their satellite groups would be interested in conducting. This is the kind of stuff that the Weather Underground would have done. You know, of course, they were blowing up government buildings. It's obvious these kids are not going to be able to get into government buildings. They've already tried to take over a ICE facility, and they all ended up getting shot and getting felony charges. Probably never going to see the outside of a prison cell ever again. But I think it's highly likely that what we're looking at here is an act of environmental sabotage, eco-terrorism, and it would have been committed by the very same people who are engaging in these paid protests throughout Minnesota and many other places around the United States. Will this be enough for President Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act? I don't know, but I would think that this would get us a lot closer. Right here, this is going to be a tremendous amount of infrastructure cost thrown straight down the drain. Also, you've got the loss of any of this fuel. I don't know how long this would have lasted, like in terms of the burn. You know, how quickly were they able to shut it out? There are safeguard valves at different points throughout the pipeline. Of course, by shutting down the pipeline, you're going to lose capacity being delivered to places that obviously need it. This was published at 4:27 p.m., so roughly 2 hours ago. And it was said that the blast was felt for miles away. The fire was still going. At this time, nobody knew what had caused it. However, officials were telling everybody to stay inside. What else is really unfortunate here is that you're also going to have an environmental impact from fuel spilling out onto the ground. Likely wildlife could be killed as well. And then, of course, you have pollution that would take place as a result of this fuel spilling onto the ground and then perhaps seeping into the groundwater. So all kinds of different nasty impacts as a result of this. Frodo Baggins, thank you so much for that Bitcoin donation over there through Rumble Wallet. Appreciate that $25, my friend. Thank you very, very much. So I think that if there is going to be something that causes President Trump to declare the Insurrection Act to be necessary, domestic terrorism in the form of blowing up a gas pipeline right where all of this is happening, I think that this would probably be the case. Trump said 28 times Bush used the Insurrection Act. It was only 2. He definitely, okay, hold on just a second. He did say 28 times. Go to post 28. Oh my God. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. This is actually super cool. Okay. All right. So this is old school post, November 1st, 2017. This is when they were still back on 4chan on poll. Let's see. All right. So this is a post from an anon that Q replied to. What must be completed to engage military intelligence over? Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, this is a repost from another post, but it doesn't have the number of the post embedded. And then an anon replies to it, and then Q replies to them. Okay, so what must be completed to engage military intelligence over other 3-letter agencies? During the 1950s and 60s, federal troops and federalized National Guard forces, accompanied by military intelligence personnel, were deployed to help integrate Southern Schools 23 and to help deal with civil disorders in Detroit in 1967 and other cities the following year, after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Throughout this period, military intelligence units also continued to collect data on Americans at home who were suspected of involvement in subversive activities. In the late 1960s, the Pentagon compiled personal information on more than 100,000 politically active Americans in an effort to quell civil rights and anti-Vietnam War demonstrations and to discredit protesters. The Army used 1,500 plainclothes agents to watch demonstrations, infiltrate organizations, and spread disinformation. According to one report, the Army had at least one observer at every demonstration of more than 20 people. The Army's activities were summed up by Senator Sam Ervin, allegedly for the purpose of predicting and preventing civil disturbances which might develop beyond the control of state and local officials. Army agents were sent throughout the country to keep surveillance over the over the way the civilized population expressed their sentiments about government policies. In churches, on campuses, in classrooms, in public meetings, they took notes, tape recorded, and photographed people who dissented in thought, word, or deed. This included clergymen, editors, public officials, and anyone who sympathized with the dissenters. That was from Digital Commons, law.lsu.edu. And the Anon replies to, okay, so what must be completed to engage military intelligence over other three-letter agencies? That's taken from a post. This is the Anon's answer to it, citing Digital Commons, and then continues, ha ha ha, Trump has had military intelligence infiltrate Antifa and all the dissenting local governments, always 5 steps ahead. Please be true. And then Q replies, well done, picture being painted. Man, that's pretty awesome there. All right, so speaking of that subset of individuals who are working to destabilize the nation through their participation in the paid protests and in that horrific action that we saw where the FBI agent's gun was stolen and all of those agents' vehicles were broken into. Yesterday, we identified this young woman right here. Her name is, once again, Mira Altabel Resendez. She is a they, them. And we know that because she posted a picture on her Instagram of her breasts having been cut off. Kind of disturbing. Here she is right here. She's one of the people who stole federal property in Minnesota. She posted this on her Instagram where she talked about the anniversary of her top surgery and how much she loves it. Here she is in another Instagram post on somebody else's account. This is just backing up the fact that this is actually her. This is also her posting about being present at this very protest where these agents' vehicles were broken into. She includes her Venmo so she can get a donation from people. And she has a picture from the protest on the 13th where she is identifying herself as being part of those that were outside. This was the one where they were breaking into that hotel or numerous hotels. Now, in regards to exactly who she is, we have St. James Heartline right here. Violent transgender extremist Mira Altabel Resendez, a University of Minnesota staffer. She's at the Office of Equity and Diversity. She's an access specialist. She's been identified as that woman who smashed into the federal vehicle in Minneapolis. She's the one who grabbed those sensitive documents we were talking about yesterday, which included the agent information for both ICE and FBI. She passed them out. She made sure that they were seen on those left-wing streams. As a University of Minnesota office support assistant, U.S. taxpayers are the ones paying Resendez's salary. In 2024, she made $46,780.40. She was paid $44,116.80 in 2023 and $35,859.20 in 2022. During this period of time, she has been involved in a number of violent insurrection acts. She is apparently a rabid anti-Semite, and she's been involved in repressive efforts to force university and corporations to divest from Israel and end any further deals with them. She's also engaged in criminal conspiracy acts to disrupt, obstruct, threaten, and dox federal ICE agents and to violently resist the Department of Homeland Security's legally mandated obligations to force federal immigration laws in Minneapolis. Both she and her University of Minnesota Labor Union, which is AFSCME 3800 UMN, have engaged in violent violations of federal law, federal RICO organized efforts to disrupt, intimidate, and threaten employees of the federal government and the University of Minnesota. And Resendez and her labor union have terrorized students, faculty, and federal ICE agents in a concerted effort to achieve their political goals by force and to meet their demands and to implement their pro-Palestinian, anti-capitalism, communist, Marxist cult ideology. Here is another picture of her. She's tagged with the Minnesota Workers United. Here she is with her AFSCME information from the University of Minnesota's website. Here she is at a protest for AFSCME UMN. And here is a sign that includes justice for Renee Good from AFSCME. Now, now that she's being identified, all of her personal information has been scrubbed from the University of Minnesota's website. So I don't know if that means that University of Minnesota has fired her or if they're just helping to disguise the fact that she is associated with them. But I think it's only a matter of time until she is arrested. So I wanted to do a live search and see if any news has come up about her apprehension. No, only her identification. We do have her previous arrest record right here. She was just arrested back in October 29th of last year. Trespass premises of another, refused to depart. She was booked on that. And I'm not seeing anything else from her being arrested as of today. But she was present at a whole host of other protests. Abortion protest in 2022, Russia protest in 2022, SDS protest in 2023, ACB protest in 2023, abortion protest in 2023, Palestine protest February of 2024, and there is a list of even more. It would appear that she is a paid protester. She is one of those people who is on the payroll. Now, you can see here, UMN has scrubbed her from their website. So again, that doesn't mean that she no longer works there. It just means that they are trying to cover up the fact that they are affiliated with her. Here she is just a couple of days ago with, wouldn't you know it, Minnesota's favorite daughter, Ilhan Omar. You can see she's holding a microphone. She's standing directly next to Ilhan Omar. So what is their personal connection? How do they know each other? So again, she is going to be arrested very, very soon, given the way that the FBI is going after the people who have been involved in these violent and damaging protests. Now, that protest at the hotels that we spoke about the other night, there was one particular individual, Giorgio James Jones, who was caught on camera smashing the windows at this hotel where federal authorities were staying. This is him right here. And the FBI was able to find him and arrest him. I think I played this video the other day, but just in case I didn't, we'll go ahead and show it again, and you can see him actually committing the act of damaging this property. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He wasn't. This is not at the hotel. This is actually at the federal building. I'm sorry. Oh, no! ICE, oh, no! ICE, oh, no! ICE, oh, no! ICE, oh, no! So, yeah, they smashed the windows and the rotating glass doors at the federal building. There's one such example.
About opening these doors because we're out here. I say these doors don't open until ICE is out of this city. Yeah. Who's lying? I know you're lying. Tell you people here now. This is the time.
This is the time. Oh no. All right, so the FBI and partners arrested Giorgio James Jones, the individual who allegedly smashed windows attempting to breach a federal courthouse in Minneapolis last week. As the FBI has said repeatedly, if you attack law enforcement, impede their operations, or engage in violent, destructive behavior, the FBI will find you and bring you to justice. He was one of a number of dozens of anti-ICE protesters who were banging on the doors at the courthouse. I don't know of anybody else who was arrested from this particular incident, but there have been a series of arrests taking place over the last several days. Again, at the Whipple Federal Building, ICE was facing a number of violent protesters. They were throwing things at the agents. They were shouting profanities. They were also pouring water on the ground to make ice on the ground so that agents would slip when they came out. Obviously, hazardous conditions. These four protesters were arrested after they refused to disperse And they have all been booked on federal charges. This is just after they were arrested. Don't know their names yet, but I'm certain that ICE will be revealing that shortly. Now, the Latin Kings gang member that we spoke about yesterday, he was actually arrested while we were on the show yesterday, but I hadn't gotten a mugshot yet. But now the government has released some information. We initially thought that maybe he was a member of Tren de Aragua or MS-13, but Latin Kings is even more significant because that is a gang that is directly tied to the Mexican drug cartels. And we've spoken about Latin Kings on a number of occasions because they're the ones who had put the murder bounties out on Greg Bovino and any other ICE agent. Another Latin Kings gang member was arrested in Los Angeles during the initial operations that were taking place there because they were sending messages around and offering thousands of dollars if anybody would go and kill an ICE agent and then show proof of that. So the Latin Kings also happen to be the largest Hispanic street gang in the world. The information that we have is that the individual known as... what is his name? Here we go. His name is Gutierrez, Raul Gutierrez. He is 33 years old. He's being arrested, and he is now in custody, and he's probably not going to see the outside of a prison cell anytime soon. Let's see. Freya and Boy says it's more about all the houses that will have no heat in Minnesota winter. It will not take long to fix it, a few days at the most. I worked in natural gas distribution for 7 years. Okay, so I wasn't sure if it was liquefied natural gas, if it was gasoline. Wasn't sure exactly what type of fuel it was, but you're absolutely correct. If this is gas to heat people's homes or help them cook at home, then obviously huge disruption. So, continuing, last night in Minneapolis, an additional 12 anti-ICE agitators were arrested for assaulting law enforcement. I believe that this was also taking place at that ICE facility. That same ICE facility where we saw the agents beginning to push back a little harder. Greg Bovino is there as well, and he is leading agents out to push these protesters back. So those 12 individuals were all being charged with felonies. I'm certain that we're going to get all of their names very soon, and their particular networks will be mapped and added on to the information that the government is collecting at this time. Also, earlier today, those protesters were still out in force at the exact same federal building. Now, the agents were engaged in a number of skirmishes with them. Looks like Minneapolis police were also on scene with them, and they were wearing their riot gear. So kudos to those boys for getting out and doing the work.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection Police arresting a protester, seems to be a person who was outside this building. We just witnessed them arresting another person moments ago, and now they're clearing the street. Now, it has happened a few times, Dana, that protesters take the street. That's when police moves in to clear the street right outside this building. Now, this, I will say, is the most forceful that I've seen the federal forces be with protesters. There seem to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 agents on top of this person.
So Minneapolis police providing minimal coverage, probably there simply directing traffic on the outskirts. Border Patrol police are the ones that are actively engaged in the takedowns of protesters. Don't know how many of them have been arrested today. I saw somebody in the chat say this is way beyond peaceful assembly. This is not a peaceful assembly, and it hasn't been a peaceful assembly since the very beginning, I would argue. They need to arrest as many people as they possibly can. What's really hilarious is that the city attorney for Minneapolis is holding a healing circle therapy cry out with therapy goats because the city leaders are so despondent about the situation they are being put in right now, and they blame everything on ICE. Of course, the radical leftists that are being paid to come in and disrupt their city, they are blameless. And so I thought this was an interesting choice to have therapy goats come in, because I wondered if they were also going to have a halal slaughter of a goat in front of these people. How damaging would that be for their minds if a Muslim walked in and said, hey, that looks like dinner, and then he just slit the goat's throat and bled it out in front of all those people? So the city attorney has announced that this goat therapy session is going to be the top priority for the city government this week. This is coming from an internal email that was sent around to city attorneys early yesterday morning, inviting staff to this midday healing circle designed for quiet, supportive connection. And the therapy goats would be on hand to offer people a little bit of support, I guess. The email was signed by City Attorney Kristen Anderson, who naturally made sure to include the fact that she is a she, her. The columnist Dustin Grage for Town Hall broke the story on X, saying, breaking, Minneapolis City Attorney's Office emailed staff inviting them to a healing circle. Now, here is the email. Human Resources will be facilitating a healing circle from 12 to 1 in this room for any city employees who would like to be in a shared space with colleagues. This is intended as a quiet, supportive environment for connection and presence. As a reminder, therapy goats will also be there at noon, and folks are welcome to stop by at any point. I mean, goats can be super cute, right? I mean, I just feel bad for the goats having to be around people with this sort of negative energy. Oh, my gosh. And of course, you can't forget the fact that the city of Minneapolis is absolutely on fire. The city leaders have allied themselves with these domestic terrorists. They are not participating in the enforcement of immigration. They are putting all of these negative stereotypes and blame on ICE for taking part in this. They're actively working through court to try to stop the federal government from cleaning up their town. Misfit Angie says, I haven't heard if these agitators are being bailed out like during the Summer of Love. Have you seen or heard that at this time? No, I have not. But I would imagine that the bail that would be set for this level of federal charges is probably going to be a lot more than the bail that these people would receive from like a local jurisdiction in an area where, they might not even have serious considerations for cash bail. If it is possible to bail these people out, I would imagine the funds are there. But as far as I've seen, nobody is going online and saying, I was just bailed out by my Antifa trust fund or anything like that. Also, at the same time this is happening, ICE is still going and doing their enforcement operations all over the entire city. They're still going to businesses. They are still raiding these Somali scam places. They're also going and arresting people, putting them in detention, regardless of where they live. So this is a small suburb, someplace in Minnesota, and the entire family was illegal. So ICE arrested the mom, the dad, and the kids because none of them had a right to be here.
You got kids. What are you taking kids for? What are you taking kids for? Those are kids. You're taking kids, man. You're taking kids. What are you doing?
So yes, and I see someone in the chat said that another 20 or so police have resigned. I had heard, so we reported the other day that some 60 to 70 officers had applied for their government-funded 20 weeks of leave to go care for someone for some reason without having to give a reason why. And then I had heard that another 20 to 40 officers since that time had also come and done the exact same thing. So I don't know if the report that you heard is in regards to the same situation, because I haven't heard that people are actively leaving the Minnesota Police Department. I've heard that they are asking for their 20 weeks of paid leave. I would imagine that they're probably going to get that 20 weeks of paid leave before they put in their resignations, because effectively they're going to get the exact same thing, only they're going to get paid the entire time. Now, Minnesota police, they have roughly 600 officers on staff. And by all accounts, roughly 100 officers have just taken themselves off the street in one way or another. I would imagine that number is going to continue to rise. Police have already come forward and said that their morale is extremely low. They know what the government of Minnesota is asking from them. They know that the police chief is essentially defying them from participating and helping ICE. There's probably a whole bunch of Minneapolis police officers who are lefties and they don't want to assist anyways. But the Minneapolis Police Department has been gutted essentially, and it's only going to get worse for them. So God, the people of Minneapolis, they need ICE there. They need ICE there. Something awful. All right, let me say thank you to a couple of friends over here on Pilled before we continue. Thong Chaser, good to see you, homie. He says, thanks, Zach. Filter Dog says, Zach deserves always solid content. 1,000 gold pills. Thank you for that, my friend. Tomcat, good to see you, man. TGIF, Adel sent us. Awesome. Thank you, Adel. Thank you to the 412 fam. Thank you to Hogleg71 for a cookie and a can. Thank you to No Thanks Joe, who says, happy Friday, Lisa and Zach. Thanks again for your continued work. I don't know a lot, but I'm not sure I agree in regards to Carrie. In regards to Carrie, he comes straight from London Central, or Carney. London Central casting and may very well be setting the New World Order seed. God bless, stay safe, have a great weekend. So I don't think that Carney is our guy. But I do think that President Trump has his balls in a vice. And I think that a lot of the globalist sort of leaning leaders will be forced to acquiesce to President Trump and the United States demands. But I don't think that necessarily means that they like it. So I've seen nothing to me to indicate that Carney is, he's not pro-Trump, but he certainly knows when somebody has control over him. That's what I think is happening. No Thanks Joe says, sorry for the misspellings, using my mic typing once again. Have a great weekend. God bless. God bless you as well. Black Adder, humans do smart things like stay out of the way. If you dim enough to get sucked into being a 3D printed retard, you just experienced the new 64-bit 5G transmission protocols. The block wall is tightening to make that digital data move faster through the human walnut. I love that. That's very cool. Trump1 says, love the chat. Thanks for posting. Thank you also to everybody who participates in the chat. We got the comfiest chats on the internet. Also, Mighty Patriot, good to see you, homie. Thank you for the shades. We need to send in a platoon of Marines behind one of these groups and arrest them all in one big swoop. So what I would imagine is that now, given this, what in my opinion must be an act of domestic terrorism, there will be a harvesting of information, communications, and comms taking place in Minnesota. Once they determine exactly who is behind it and which individuals had a part to play, they'll probably swoop in. Marines will be deployed, and it'll be something that will be done fairly in a calculated manner. I don't think that they're going to go in and do it without having a plan or thinking about it. But yeah, Lisa says you're welcome. It's Lisa's fault that the chat is so comfy. I mean, I have her to thank for it. All right, now Renee Good's not wife. Turns out they were never married. It was just her girlfriend. Renee Good's family has now hired the legal team that represented George Floyd's family. I'm certain that they've come into this and they've seen massive dollar signs, big payday that they're going to think they're going to get out of the federal government. That's not going to be the case, though. So the legal firm Romanucci and Blandin, they are based in Chicago. They confirmed they're going to be representing Renee Good's family. That includes her parents, her siblings, and her girlfriend. Now, interestingly enough, the legal firm began their announcement calling for peace, perhaps aware that roiling anti-immigration and customs enforcement riots are not going to be a good thing to do because they are getting increasingly violent, as we've just seen. They also went on to vilify ICE. They said the family of Renee Nicole Macklin Good is calling for peace. Peace not only across Minneapolis, a city in shock about her swift and cruel death at the hands of federal agents on a residential street. Again, it's not their fault. She used her 4,000-pound Honda Passport to try to roll them over. But peace in cities across the country where Americans are increasingly and understandingly distressed by the conduct of the federal government that defies our constitutional values and sows chaos in our communities. It doesn't, but that's okay. What happened to Renee is wrong. No, what happened to Renee is unfortunate, but it was also something that didn't have to happen. Contrary to established policing practices and procedures, and should have never happened in today's America. They're right about that. It never should have happened in today's America because she never should have been so stupid to think that she could drive her car over an ICE agent and not get her forehead ventilated. Now, let's go ahead. I got to skip out of this. Because, of course, we have all the video. We've seen it from every possible angle. There is one version of that video which makes it look like the ICE agent wasn't going to get run over. But we've seen enough. We know exactly what happened. They continued their announcement by saying, "Be good. This is the clear message from the family as Renee's wish to the world." These words also encompass the mission of their attorneys, who they have retained to not only seek accountability for her death, but also to honor her life with progress towards a kinder and more civil America. They do not want her used as a political pawn, as they are about to do, but rather as an agent of peace for all. They also appeared to criticize the investigation. Importantly, the legal team intends to conduct its civil investigation with an understanding that transparency is essential in the case of national importance. The community is not receiving transparency about this case elsewhere, so our team will provide that to the country. Now, Mr. Romanucci, the founding member of the law firm, claimed his firm was doing work that people truly care about. I would tend to disagree. People in Minneapolis and across the country truly care about what happened to Renee Good, and they are committed to understanding how she could have been killed on the street after dropping her child off at school. Shh. They want to know what could and should have been done to let Renee live and pick her kid up from safety. I'll tell you what, that's a very easy question. We can answer it right away. Don't impede a federal operation. Simple as that. That's exactly how she could have ended up at home with her child, cooking them dinner, reading them a book, tucking them in, and then going and taking a shower or laying down with her girlfriend, whatever she wanted to do. We are committed to providing good transparency and good accountability, which we ultimately hope leads to good policing. I think ICE is doing a bang-up job. And I think they could do an even bigger bang-up job. Now, Romanucci's firm helped award George Floyd's family a massive $27 million civil settlement in Minneapolis. That was, of course, for Minneapolis officers, and that thing was rigged from the very beginning. I think Derek Chauvin should be freed. He did absolutely nothing wrong. He did not kill George Floyd. He did not kneel on George Floyd's neck. He did exactly what he was trained to do, just as that ICE agent did exactly what he was trained to do. The federal government is not going to allow Renee Good's family or these lawyers to get any money out of them. And in the interest of transparency, I thought we should take a look at the report from the Minneapolis Fire Department because it gives us some of that transparency and it tells us a little bit more about exactly how Renee Nicole Good died. Now, it was initially reported that she was shot 3 times, but when we take a look at the incident report, it appears she was actually shot 4 times. That officer, despite the fact that he was hit by her vehicle and bounced off the front bumper, shot every single bullet that came out of his gun into Renee Nicole Good. That, my friends, is what we call trigger discipline. He had a good grouping, and he knew exactly how to use his weapon. So, Renee Good suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the chest, 1 to the forearm, and another to the left side of her head. Renee Nicole Good suffered those 2 gunshot wounds to the right side of her chest, 1 to her left forearm, and 1 with protruding tissue on the left side of the patient's head. Back and to the right. Back and to the right. Protruding tissue means exposed brain matter coming out. Now, initial reports had said that she was shot 3 times, but apparently the officer got all of them in her. Paramedics found her unresponsive in the car at 9:42 a.m. She had blood on her face and torso. She was not breathing, and her pulse was described as inconsistent and irregular. Emergency responders moved her from the vehicle to a snowbank and then onto the sidewalk to create a separation from an escalating scene involving law enforcement and bystanders. And at that point, she was still not breathing and pulseless. They took her to the hospital and she was declared dead. All right, so if that doesn't offer some transparency, I don't even know what does. Now, we are going to move Hey, Would You Blow Me says, I got a city ordinance ticket. I went to court and lost, but I objected and appealed with a $960 bond. I just got my bond back and my case overturned. Ordinances are not laws. Congratulations, Haywood. I am proud of you, my friend. Artsy Jones says, Zach, do you know what will happen to the child left with the wife of good? She is an abuser, so the child surely won't stay with her, right? Can you find out? Praying for our children. Considering the fact that Good and her girlfriend were not married, considering that the child has grandparents. Now, here's the thing. I don't know. I believe that she had those children with different fathers. The two children that were taken by the grandparents were the children that were sired by the man who killed himself, Mr. Macklin. I don't know if this last child was sired by Mr. Macklin or a different guy. But considering that this woman has no maternal affiliation with the child, there is nothing legal. I would imagine that the child is going to end up going to live with those grandparents if those grandparents are directly related to them. If not them, then that child would go to the next closest relative. Worst case scenario, the kid ends up in the system. I sincerely hope that that's not the case. But I can't imagine that they would just leave that child with a random girlfriend of this woman, despite however long they had been dating or however long they had been living together. So, yeah, haven't heard anything about who is going to take possession of the child. But, now that there's like $1.5 million that's at stake too, that may have something to do with the decision on who's going to raise them, unfortunately. But you make an excellent point on the fact that she's an abuser. I don't think that kid should be anywhere near that woman. All right, now, this is a horrible, horrible story. I have 3 really downer stories here before we start talking about something else. But not all daycare centers in Minnesota are fraudulent. Some of them are just deadly. This is a place called Rocking Horse Daycare Center, and it's in Savage, Minnesota. A young baby, 11-month-old Harley Mucklebust, was a child at this daycare center, and his provider murdered him. Okay. And she tried to murder another baby, another toddler as well. This happened in September of last year. So this worker at Rocking Horse Childcare, called the 911 operators on September 22nd, reporting that this baby, Harvey Mucklebust, was not breathing. They came, they showed up, they took the baby to the hospital. He was unfortunately pronounced dead. Now, 3 days prior to Mucklebust's death, authorities responded to the same daycare where a 4-month-old infant was found with blood under their nose and inside their mouth. Now, authorities have now arrested Thea Russell. Thea Russell was the worker at that daycare center, and she's been charged with second-degree murder. I don't know why she's not being charged with first-degree murder, because she tried to kill one baby. She should be charged with attempted murder for that one. And then she successfully killed another baby just a couple of days later. So she is charged with attempted murder for the attempted murder of that first baby, but she really should be charged with first-degree murder for Harvey's death. Now, she attempted to strangle either this child or another child. Now, the police chief of Savage, Brady Jewell, said Russell has a history of erratic behavior towards children. Why in the hell was she working at a daycare center? But she confessed to intentionally suffocating Mucklebust in an attention-seeking act, he said. An attention-seeking act. Authorities investigated her background. They found a documented history of attention-seeking behavior, including nonsensical 911 calls. starting fires, erratic behavior towards children. She never should have been working at this daycare. Now, the license for Rocking Horse Daycare has been suspended. And Thea Russell, 18 years old, is arrested, and she's probably not going to get out. Let's take a look. Well, first of all, yeah, they'll have a picture of Harvey in this report. I just want you to see Harvey.
Statements, Chief Jewell and County Attorney Hosever will be available to answer questions.
Here's this beautiful little baby boy, 11 months old, murdered by this woman. Never should have happened. He looks so sweet. Like, I can't imagine what world someone would think that this is something appropriate to do. Now, the woman who did it is a young black woman. I don't know if there is some racial component to this. Thea Russell is not a Somalian name. But
please note that the family will not be
really unfortunate that this is happening at the same time all of these other daycares are being found to be fraudulent. So Thea Ludemia Russell, this is her right here. There is no picture of the child that she did not successfully kill. Now, you probably remember last year in Georgia, there was another daycare worker who was arrested and charged with severely beating a 1-year-old boy at Little Blessings Childcare in Bainbridge, Georgia. This child right here, thank God he survived, again, was a black woman. Don't know if there was a racial component to that as well. But this is totally unacceptable. I've got another incident right here. This time, this man was a home health aide, and this is in New York. He was caught on camera aggressively slapping and abusing a severely disabled child on the chest, on his back, on his head. There were bruises left on him. His name is Bruno Valenzuela. He's 31 years old, and this child is 5 years old. He's got cerebral palsy. He wears a diaper. He is disabled to the point that, you know, he is kind of almost, you know, stunted and stuck in the body of a toddler. He's just a kind of a larger toddler. So this happened on December 20th. He's got a whole host of other complex medical needs, and we're going to take a look at this. I want to warn you that the footage of him abusing this child was caught on a hidden camera inside the house.
A surveillance video from December 20th inside the Port Jefferson home where Christopher Brower, his wife, and their 5-year-old son Maverick live. The video shows who police have now identified as Bruno Valenzuela, a home health aide, aggressively slapping the child on the back and chest, leaving him with bruises after he started coughing and crying while his parents were out, according to investigators. Brower said Maverick has cerebral palsy, complex medical needs, is nonverbal, and also non-ambulatory.
So he can't move, and he can't speak. He can't tell anyone what's happening to him.
2 days after the incident, the family took Maverick to the hospital and immediately filed a police report. Last night, Suffolk County Police arrested the 31-year-old at his home in Brentwood. He's been charged with endangering the welfare of a physically disabled person and endangering the welfare of a child. Surveillance.
People who do these type of acts are the most sadistic and heinous examples of mankind. They should not be allowed to walk the streets. They should go to prison for the rest of their lives. Here is another really tragic event. This just underscores the need for an overhaul to our judicial system. Another progressive jury, this time in San Francisco, is refusing to charge a black man with murder. In 2021, this man killed an 84-year-old elderly man unprovoked. He charged at him, attacked him, and slammed him to the pavement. This old man hit his head on the concrete, and he died. So this guy has been in jail this entire time. The jury is letting him off with time served. Runs into him, smashes him, and then just calmly walks away. A society that tolerates this type of behavior is a society that cannot survive. We cannot allow these things to happen. There has to be some type of check or balance that comes in when a jury, in the face of overwhelming evidence, they're obviously not going to convict him for murder because the guy is black and it's San Francisco. The evidence is clear and overwhelming. You can't allow this stuff to happen. And I don't know what the answer is. I'm obviously not able to do anything about it myself. But I'll tell you what, if I ever sit on a jury and I have the opportunity to dispense justice, I'm going to. All right. Before we continue, I have one final message from our friends over here on Rumble. All right. You guys, banks can freeze your accounts. They can shut off your cards. They can lock you out of your own money overnight. Banks do not protect you. They control you. And that's why real financial freedom starts with ownership. So, introducing Rumble Wallet, a non-custodial wallet built for people who refuse to give up control. With Rumble Wallet, you don't just buy digital currency like Bitcoin and Tether. You can own Tether Gold, real gold on the blockchain. Through Tether Gold, you get direct ownership of physical gold bars, each one fully allocated, verifiable by serial number, purity, and weight. It's not paper gold. It's not an IOU. This is real gold without bank vaults, storage fees, or gatekeepers. You can buy, sell, or move it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even when traditional gold markets are closed. And if you want, Tether Gold can be redeemed for that physical gold. That is powerful. And when you support creators on Rumble, you can tip them directly using Rumble Wallet, peer-to-peer, and outside the banking system. No permissions, no middlemen, no cancel button. This wallet is yours forever. So you can head to wallet.rumble.com, use the QR code, or get the app in your app store. Now, somebody had commented, or they had sent me a message. Well, who was it? Somebody Shackelford. If you're in the chat, hello, I responded to you. So Tether is different from Tether Gold. They are two different coins. Tether is a stable coin. It's $1, 1 for 1. Tether is backed by US dollars and a certain amount of precious metals. So they have roughly 7% in their vaults backing up the value of Tether coins. Same, I believe, with silver. And of course, for every $1 you have in Tether coin, it is backed by $1 in value. Tether Gold is exclusively backed by gold, and it is pegged directly to physical gold. So there's only so many Tether Gold coins out there based upon how much gold Tether has in their vaults to actually attach it to. So two different coins. Wounds Are Us says, I've raised 4 kids, 2 with severe disabilities. Shake my head. Why doesn't this get more press? Oh, yeah, it doesn't meet the heartless leftist Marxist ideology. And that's exactly why I cover it. Lisa was like, oh, God, I can't believe you're going to talk about this. Why are you going to talk about this? And I get it. I understand why people don't want to see this because it's heartbreaking, but it doesn't get talked about enough. People, it's like you see something like this and you're like, I am sick to my stomach. It's like something that you don't even want to face. But I think that this is happening far more often than people even are aware of. And the stuff that we hear about is probably on the minuscule end of the scale of what's truly taking place. I think that it needs to be talked about because I want the society to be outraged that the most vulnerable and the ones that we should be protecting are the ones who are being abandoned, who are being abused, and who are being left in the hands of people that parents believe they can trust. A home health aide is there to help take the pressure off of the parents. Those parents can't be there because they're forced to work. Somebody else has got to be there to help with that kid. And somebody like that monster or that woman at that daycare center, they should never have been allowed to go into a position like that. I've said it before. I think that mandatory psychological tests need to be given to people when you work in certain industries. I don't think you should be a narcissistic psychopath if you want to be a cop or if you want to be a home health care aide or a nurse or any of that stuff. That should probably forbid you from doing a lot. But then the question becomes, what do we do with those people? I don't know. The world would be a much better place if we didn't have to live with that stuff. All right. Now, SBA, their investigation into STAP has extended beyond simply the blue states. Now they're looking at red states, and they're finding that, guess what? The problem is just as bad in the red states. Here, Brooke Rollins discusses additional fraud that they found, a couple of new things, some old stuff she's talked about before, but new stuff as well.
All the red states sent us their data to help figure out what that looked like. We found 200,000 dead people, or people using dead people's social security numbers. We found 500,000 people getting more than 2 times what they should have, getting those benefits twice. We found some guy getting benefits in 5 states. And Maria, this is just the red states. I mean, the red states normally have a smaller program, tighter accountability and control. The blue states sued us, and so we're in another active litigation on that. They don't want California, New York, they don't want to turn their data over so that we can help them root out the fraud. And then the Minnesota piece, of course, which we've all been covering, is remarkable.
Yeah.
So we are in court. We're going to work really hard to make sure we're protecting the American taxpayer and the people who actually need these programs. All
right, so an additional 200,000 dead people in only the red states have been receiving SNAP. So that means that whomever was getting those benefits in the name of those dead people, they've been committing felonies. They are now going to be forced to pay restitution. They're going to be charged. They're going to be held to account. And then another 500,000 people getting benefits in multiple states. One guy getting benefits in 5 states. My goodness. There, you know what? I totally forgot to put it on Brooke's video. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Could you hear it at the very least?
red states sent us their data to help figure out what that looked like. We found 200,000 dead people, or people using dead people's social security numbers. We found 500,000 people getting more than 2 times what they should have, getting those benefits twice. We found some guy getting benefits in 5 states. And Maria, this is just the red states. I mean, the red states normally have a smaller program, tighter accountability and control.
So it goes to show you that no matter how much accountability, no matter how much control you have, the possibility for fraud still exists. It gives an even greater argument for the need to audit the problems that we have already identified in all of these blue states. Again, President Trump and the administration, SBA, they will be successful in that effort. It's unfortunately just going to take time to go through these legal challenges. Now, in addition to that, Senator John Kennedy has just gotten a bill passed in Congress. It's gone through the House and the Senate. It's on its way to President Trump to sign. This is a legislation which should not need to exist, but based upon what Brooke Rollins just told us and what we found throughout the entirety of the welfare system, this bill will stop sending government checks to dead people. So anyone with a social security number that is identified as deceased will no longer receive any kind of welfare subsidy, payment, grant funding, anything from the federal government. I can't believe it took this long to do it.
I want to talk to you about the Ending Improper Payments to Deceased People Act. Boy, that's a mouthful. Here's what I want to talk about. Many Louisianians read the stories about the welfare fraud in Minnesota and, frankly, in other states, and it makes them nauseous. I feel the same way. That's why I have been working for years, literally years, to target welfare fraud, especially the fraudsters who conduct fraud in the name of deceased Americans. In 2023 alone, for example, the federal government sent $1.3 billion, not million, billion. The federal government sent $1.3 billion to dead people. It's so pervasive that the Social Security Administration, which maintains a list of dead Americans known as the Death Master File, if someone dies, the state sends them.
This is what I was talking about when I mentioned how when my father died, they immediately shut down his bank account. Social Security was immediately shut down. Everything was shut down. So it begs the question, how is it that dead people on the Social Security master file are able to receive payments? The only way that, in my mind, it's been possible has been through a sophisticated system of fraud.
The name of the deceased person to the Social Security Administration, and that person's name is listed on what's called the Death Master File. we found that Social Security was not sharing this information, the names of the folks on the death master file, with the rest of the federal government. One branch of government wasn't talking to another branch of government. The Social Security Administration told me when I confronted them about this and asked them, why don't you talk to your colleagues and other colleagues in the federal government so we can stop paying dead people? Social Security told me it needed Congress's permission to share this information with, for example, the Treasury Department, so it could include the list of dead Americans and its do not pay system. I didn't argue with them. I said, I'm just going to go pass a bill. Well, a few years ago I did. I passed a bill called the Stopping Improper Payments to Deceased People Act. And that bill allowed the Social Security Administration to temporarily share its death master file with the Department of the Treasury. I had to amend the bill to provide, it's a long story and it was frustrating, to provide for a temporary sharing. They wanted to try it out first. Well, it worked. Duh. Since December of 2023, this bill has saved the federal government at least $330 million in improper payments. We're no longer paying dead people and having their friends or relatives or whomever cash the checks. It was obvious that Congress needed to make this data sharing arrangement permanent. So I had to introduce, and was happy to do it, I introduced a second bill to do just that. That's why it took years to get this done.
5 years. 5 years from start to finish to get this done. And I want to point that out because so many people are frustrated with the seeming lack of effort, I know I am, and forward movement from Congress on many of these issues. These people are constantly deadlocked in the bureaucracy of the federal government. It takes so long to do anything of substance, and it took everything that we've witnessed being exposed over the last year to finally push it to the point where now we're making this a reality. Think about how many other things need to be done. But yet they have no problem passing giant omnibus bills with so many pieces of legislation that are simply cutting paychecks to the people who support them to support their own needs.
This week, I'm pleased to say the House passed my bill, the Ending Improper Payments to Deceased People Act. This bill had already passed the Senate, and now that it's passed the House, it's on its way to President Trump's desk so he can sign it into law. Now, dead people don't need welfare. I think that's obvious. But I'm not going to stop with just this bill. I'm going to continue to urge my colleagues in the Senate, my friends in the House, to pass another reconciliation bill, which we can do without Democratic votes, just like we did the one big, beautiful bill, to include the subject of welfare fraud. Welfare fraud. It's inexcusable. It's unconscionable. These are taxpayer dollars. And I'm not going to stop till we get it done.
Well, we'll see how long that takes. But I think given the current temperature of the United States, this would be something they would be well suited to get done as quickly as possible. A couple of things over here on Rumble. First of all, Wounds Are Us. They have flooded illegal aliens into red states in their plan to make them blue. Yes, they have. I can attest to that down here in Florida. Further evidence of the Uniparty. ZBM says even churches do background checks on teachers in their childcare. Heck, when I was two, I would pitch a fit. When I was two, I would pitch a fit when I had to go to the nursery. Well, they checked out the teacher, and he was a recorded crazy. Denise Ann says, yes, Zach, when my mom passed away, the same thing happened. Social Security, everything was taken off immediately. Yeah, they shut down my father's bank accounts, immediately had to begin probate. It was a huge hassle. Let's see. Thank you to God is With Us 17. Love your show. Thank you. I love having you here. All right. So Beaver D over there on X replies to Representative Melanie Stansbury, who says the American people want the Epstein files, not Greenland. Well, the Epstein files are currently in the midst of being released, but they're not going to be able to continue to say that much longer because at a certain point, they're going to finish. I am perfectly in favor of Greenland being appropriated by the United States. Now, Beaver D, using the tools that she's created at SomaliScan.com, she says, sorry, Melanie, I don't have the Epstein files, but what about the Stansbury files? The Stansbury files, that would be files related to Representative Melanie Stansbury. Melanie requested $16 million for a child development center in a pueblo that has 500 people. That alone is extremely suspect, but there's much more. She has requested the second highest number of earmarks out of any person in Congress, right behind Representative Garcia, who is also corrupt and demanding Epstein files. 43% of her campaign donations come from unemployed donors, which is a common tactic used by ActBlue to hide funding in a process called smurfing. 21 of 33 tribal donations are from outside of New Mexico. They're not even her constituents, and to boot, $41 million of her earmarks are for tribes outside of her jurisdiction. You can go to SomaliScan.com/Congresswoman Stansbury, and you can take a look at everything that Melanie has attempted to have earmarked, as well as a number of criminal networks that are directly tied to her through the complicated financial transactions that she's involved in. SomaliScan.com is a wonderful resource that I highly suggest each and every one of you have bookmarked, and that you begin taking a look at your state and try to narrow it down to people who are elected in your area, because there's a lot of information that you're going to find on there. Now, Beaver D says, it turns out that Representative Stansbury is even more crooked than I thought. This woman needs to be in prison. Melanie sits on the Indian and Insular Affairs Committee and is a cartel hearing participant. So she oversees tribal health care and heard testimony on cartels in Indian country. Remember, those people are her constituents. Her native constituents were the victims of a massive $2.75 billion healthcare fraud ring that killed more than 40 people at fake sober homes, and 30 more are still missing. Remember the 68% of her donations coming from outside her jurisdiction? Well, victims from the fake sober living home scheme were picked up from reservations in her jurisdiction. These were her constituents, and they were trafficked to Arizona, same donors, and then billed for Medicaid services never provided while they were being killed. Her constituents were being killed in these fraudulent schemes. 193 people were charged. More than 40 people died. Her people were the primary victims, and yet she advocated for increased funding to the exact same programs that were clearly and proven to be exploiting them. Despite this, Stansbury still earmarks outrageous amounts of organizations with DOJ audit problems, tribes where cartels operate human and drug trafficking rings. Melanie advocates for more funding with less oversight. These people literally donate to her campaign and endorse her. They are convicted embezzlers, drug traffickers. Lots are under federal investigation. Her oversight committee failed to find $2.75 billion in healthcare fraud. Melanie is connected to these things in a way that government officials never should be. Absolutely outrageous. So I'm going to do you guys one. I'm going to repost this on my profile, and I'm actually going to drop a link to this here so you can take a look at Representative Stansbury, and if you're interested, you can also go to SomaliScan.com and start doing research on your local area, because it is totally worth it. You're going to find all sorts of distressing things. Yes, they all need to be arrested. ZBM says, oops, I meant to say he had a child abuse record. I still need glasses. Okay, excellent. All right, now, we have good news coming out of Maine. The little shop known as the Mogadishu Business Center in Lewiston, which is the heartbeat of the Somali fraud that we've discussed in the state of Maine, has just been raided by the FBI as part of a fraud investigation. It's not tied to federal immigration enforcement. This is the Federal Bureau of Investigation looking into the fraud taking place in Lewiston, Maine. We have a statement from the Lewiston Police Department. This morning, the Lewiston Police Department executed a search warrant at the business of the Little Mogadishu store located at 240 Lisbon Street. The warrant was issued as part of a lengthy fraud investigation. Lewiston police were assisted in this operation by the Department of Agriculture. The investigation remains ongoing and no further details are being released at this time. The Lewiston Police Department wishes to clarify that this investigation is not related to any immigration enforcement actions. Undoubtedly, we're going to be learning more about the fraud taking place in Maine as these enforcement operations kick up. In addition to the law enforcement presence that we would traditionally expect to see with regards to fraud, it would appear that Maine officials are now openly admitting that the deployment of ICE officers in the same sort of operation that we're seeing right now in Operation Metro Surge in the Twin Cities of Minnesota is about to take place. Democrat Governor Janet Mills and the mayors of Portland and Lewiston have all said they are prepared to be the Trump administration's next target. So now we are going to see the exact same Somali fraud ring begin to be broken up in Maine as we are seeing right now in Minneapolis. Now, do Ohio next. It makes sense. We also have two individuals in the state of New York who have just pled guilty to a $68 million adult daycare fraud scheme. These two defendants pled guilty earlier yesterday to conspiring to defraud Medicaid by paying healthcare kickbacks for services that were never provided at two Brooklyn social adult daycares and a home health care company. So we have three different businesses that are tied up in this nearly $70 million fraud. The defendants were large-scale recruiters who bribed patients with laundered cash and billed Medicaid over $68 million for services they never provided. This is a statement from Assistant Attorney General Tyson Duva of the Justice Department's Criminal Division. Today's guilty pleas demonstrate the department's long-standing commitment to rooting out fraud in government health care programs by aggressively prosecuting those who steal from taxpayer-funded programs. As demonstrated by these guilty pleas, our office will hold accountable corrupt individuals who steer patients to healthcare providers in exchange for illicit kickbacks. This case is being adjudicated out of the Eastern District of New York. We will continue to investigate and aggressively prosecute fraud schemes that steal from taxpayer funds from federal healthcare programs. These defendants orchestrated an egregious scheme involving illegal kickbacks to steer Medicaid claims and to receive payment for services never rendered. This is a statement from Special Agent in Charge Naomi Gruchaz of the Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Inspector General. Extensive fraudulent operations like this jeopardize the availability of federal health care program funds intended to support millions of beneficiaries. HHS OIG is committed to working with our law enforcement partners to bring justice to those who prioritize greed over patient care. These defendants placed profit over people and public's well-being and stole $68 million in welfare funds from those who needed it the most. Their guilty pleas today reflect that they knew exactly what crimes they were committed. They were cheating the system and, in turn, hurting vulnerable Americans. I commend HSI New York and our law enforcement partners for the unrelenting focus on dismantling and disrupting financial fraud schemes that exploit the American public and hurt our economy. So who were they? First, from court documents, we have Manal Wasef, 46, and Elaine and Tao, 46, both of Brooklyn. They were marketers and recruiters for those two adult daycare centers, Happy Family Social Adult Daycare Center Incorporated and Family Social Adult Daycare Center Incorporated, as well as Reasonable Care Staffing Incorporated, the home healthcare fiscal intermediary. Between approximately October of 2017 and July of 2024, in exchange for these kickbacks and bribes, Wasef and Antau referred Medicaid recipients to the social adult daycares and the home health care company. They also paid illegal kickbacks and bribes to Medicaid recipients for social adult daycare services and home health care services that were billed to Medicaid but were never provided, or they were induced by kickbacks and bribes. Wasef and Antau used multiple business entities to launder the frauded proceeds and generate the cash used to pay kickbacks and bribes. In connection with their guilty pleas, they agreed to collectively forfeit approximately $1 million. $1 million out of the $68 million they stole. Wasef and Antau are the 6th and 7th individuals, respectively, to plead guilty in this case. They pled guilty to conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud. Antow is scheduled to be sentenced on May 20th, and Wassef is scheduled on May 27th. They each face a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison, and their sentence will be determined by a federal district court judge after they consider the U.S. sentencing guidelines and other statutory factors. So, this is the first time I've heard about this particular case, but as they said, they are the 6th and 7th people to plead guilty in this case. $1 million coming from both of them collectively. Don't know how much of that $68 million will be forfeited from the other individuals, but considering they were just the recruiters, the people who actually owned these businesses likely were going to be forfeiting the lion's share of that $68 million. But again, it just goes to show you that just because you don't hear about something or you haven't heard about it yet doesn't mean that it hasn't been going on in the background the entire time. Now, we have another case of fraud. This time, we're going to jump to Washington, D.C. A couple of independent journalists named David Kate and Political Fabian, don't know what his real name is, they have been going around to different places in D.C. and in Georgia. They've discovered an NGO in Washington, D.C. that received $32.4 million in U.S. government funding. This is ostensibly for clean water projects in Kenya. Now, because they're operating in Kenya, it's reasonable to assume that if they're a real company, they would have office space in Kenya. But they have headquarters here in Washington, D.C. as well. The only problem is that their headquarters in Washington, D.C. are totally empty and nobody's there.
Millennium Water Alliance doesn't exist here?
Never heard of them. We found an NGO that received $35 million of taxpayer money for water in Kenya.
So we decided to visit their headquarters in DC during their business hours, but no one was there.
What's the next investigation we'll be doing?
Millennium Water Alliance.
So Millennium Water Alliance, they do not exist in Washington, D.C. Now, obviously, we don't have somebody in Kenya that we can just have go look, but let's go take a look and see if they have any pictures. Even if they have pictures, we don't know if they're real. Water Alliance, Kenya. Okay, so mwawater.org. Who we are? Let's go ahead and take a look at who we are. The Alliance collectively increases water security and resilience globally. Now, allegedly, they are made up of all of these subgroups. Now, I would imagine that $34 million they've received from federal grant funding would probably then be distributed through all of these other agencies that you find here. You can become a board member if you want. And they have apparently served over 50 million people in over 100 countries, and they have 25 members to their Millennium Water Alliance. Now, here is their Washington, D.C. address at 1101 Connecticut Avenue Northwest, Suite 450. But as you just heard, they don't really occupy space there. They do have an X account and a YouTube account. Let's go ahead and open up their X account. See if they've replied to anything. Nope, they haven't tweeted since April of last year. Okay. Let's go to their YouTube account. Maybe they'll have a video of their office space. Nope, it just looks like they have a series of PowerPoint slides, and they also haven't posted in 6 months. I don't have Facebook. They're LinkedIn. Maybe that will have information about a real person. No, unfortunately, not going to be able to do that. Okay, so in Nairobi, Kenya, their global headquarters is a P.O. box. So it's not even a place that we could visit. So they don't have a place that we can actually go check out. If we go check out their financials, we can look at their audit statement from 2024. This is an independent auditor statement. We could see, it should tell us who completed Tate Weller, tateweller.com. They might be interesting to do a dig on and see who else they're involved with. but all of their financials. Let's take a look and see exactly how much money they spent on water. Okay, so in 2024, they had total assets of $5.2 million, cash and cash equivalents of 4.8, employees receivable about 7,000, prepaid expenses 51,000, and grants. Out of that $5.2 million, the grants only equal 352,000. So you know what that means? Most of their money is probably being sent to the workers who, if I had to guess, would probably be a handful of people. So their liabilities, I'm sorry. The assets, 352,000 would be grants that they're saying they're receiving from other entities. So their liabilities, 126,000 in accounts payable, 1.6 million due to grant subrecipients, 2.8 million refundable grant advances, and $88,000 in membership dues that they're paying. And then SBA EIDL payable, 25,000. So that's a small business association loan. Why are we giving a small business loan to a company that operates out of a P.O. box in Kenya? So they ended up with $5.2 million in total assets. Let's see. Foreign government awards, $1.7 million. Federal awards of $1.3 million. Contribution of $1.9 million, $208,000 in membership dues, $1,800 in interest, and net assets released from restrictions at $239,000. They paid out $4.9 million in program services, $559,000 in support services, and only raised $1,183. This is all their grants. Their salaries are only at $1.2 million, but I don't know how many employees they have because there's nothing to tell us that on the website. They do have some labor, $248,000 in labor, $248,000 in travel, $92,000 in conferences, $2,300 for insurance, $91,000 for rent. They have no office in D.C. They have a P.O. box in Kenya, but they're paying $91,000 a year for rent, $16,000 for communications, $278,000 in miscellaneous, and $125,000 in printing supplies. Yeah. And no idea who is actually affiliated with this group. But Tate Weller in Houston, Texas says that they're totally legit. I'm sorry, Tate Weller in Philadelphia. Oh, here it says Millennium Water Alliance is actually in Houston, Texas. Do they have an office in Houston, Texas? Because that's not listed on their website. Aha, Board of Directors. They don't name them. They just say they have a board of directors. No names, though. But trust me, bro, everything's good. Yeah, something tells me this is not legit. Just looking to see. Here we go. MWA team. All right, so here we got people listed. We've got Keith Wright, the Chief Executive Officer, Darren Saywell, Chief Business Officer, Violet Moenga, the Global Finance Director, John Sparks, the Director of Advocacy, Audrey Caprio, Global Knowledge Management and Learning Officer, Alan E. Elvier, the Senior Legal Consultant, and Josephine Wanguku, an executive assistant. Oh, look, they have an office in Ethiopia, apparently. They also have a team in Kenya working out of that P.O. box. Large team in Kenya. All right. Either way, something stinks with regard to this group. All right. Thank you to Zeta Anon for the shades. You are an Oak RP. Thank you for that. Appreciate you. All right. Now, this perfectly underscores exactly why it's so important that we get every single one of these illegals out of this country. I don't care where they're from. I don't care where they're at. I don't care what they're doing. But in this instance, you had an illegal alien who's a member of the Mexican drug cartels. He was apparently setting up a fruit stand and selling drugs inside the fruits.
According to investigators, the 41-year-old sold this out of a produce stand at the very popular farmers market in Forest Park. Again, we are talking about pills containing fentanyl and also those large animal sedatives. It's extremely dangerous to humans.
Drug dealers will use whatever opportunity they can to push their poison in our community.
U.S. Attorney Theodore Hertzberg is proud of the recent arrest of Luis Sanchez Acevedo, accused of selling fake pills at the Atlanta State Farmers Market.
These pills contain deadly fentanyl as well as xylazine, an animal tranquilizer. And so we refer to this as trank dope. However, it was stamped as if these were legitimate oxycodone pills containing an M30 stamp, just like the...
So makes it even more dangerous because people, when they're seeking drugs, they're going to look for the official stamps on those pills because they're going to think that they're safer to take. But trank is the animal tranquilizer that will literally rot your body. It will destroy you. Like if you take one of those pills, melt them down, and then you inject it, the location, the injection site, will literally fester and rot, and you can lose an arm pretty quickly. That's why you see people in Kensington, in Philadelphia, walking around with big holes in their legs. Absolutely disgusting. Now, we also have an illegal alien that was identified in Houston, Texas. North Texas. He's from Honduras. He's currently wanted by the FBI, Jerson Lopez Sanchez. He is currently on the FBI's wanted list because he was driving through Texas and ramming into ICE agents' vehicles.
Son Lopez Sanchez, indicted on federal charges after allegedly ramming into multiple vehicles carrying ICE officers who were attempting to pull over the 28-year-old Honduran national on December 1st.
Fleeing from the police or obstructing their enforcement isn't acceptable, and we will not stand for it.
At a news conference Thursday morning, federal officials went at...
Oh, looks like somebody found their address in Houston, Texas. April Ann, 1980 Post Oak in Houston, Texas. Okay, we'll look that up in a second.
By Fox 4 said Lopez Sanchez did not have a criminal record or pending charges. The indictment says ICE agents were patrolling in Dallas when they requested a routine check of the registration for this Chevrolet Silverado with construction racks that was carrying 5 people. That search led agents to discover the driver and owner. Lopez Sanchez had no legal entries or applications for lawful status. In other words, he was here illegally. A traffic stop was initiated.
And the federal agents were driving 3 separate vehicles. Each one of those vehicles had red and blue flashing lights, clearly identified as law enforcement.
Lopez Sanchez pulled off I-35 in Louisville and stopped, but then allegedly put his truck in reverse, ramming an ICE SUV before speeding away. Later, ramming this ICE Chrysler minivan during a pursuit. The officer in the front passenger seat suffered...
Shout out to Ollie's. I love Ollie's.
...injuries to his knees and neck, according to the indictment.
The ramming was so violent that it deployed all the airbags in the vehicle.
E-Grab4 says, Zach, search Rumble for Nick Sorter and Cam Higbee on the Charlie Kirk show earlier today. They talked about the amount of help the local PD is giving in Minnesota. Oh, yeah, it's woefully underrepresented. And there have been numerous times, such as that series of events that took place where the ICE and FBI vehicles were broken into, where things were getting bad, and they immediately pulled the Minneapolis police out. They are giving as minimal assistance as they possibly can. Sometimes they're coming out. Other times they're not coming at all. But mostly they are totally absent. So I love it how they talk about how, there was nothing to indicate that there was anything wrong with him. He was here illegally. He never should have been here in the first place. This guy was absolutely an illegal alien. All right, so here we have 1980 Post Oak Boulevard. Stewart title and valuation is what? No, that's 1360. Hold on. Let me see if I can do maps. There we go. 1980 Post Oak. Why is it giving me restaurants? Maybe it thinks it's a restaurant? Oh my God. Okay. True Fusion is what's listed at 1980 Post Oak. That is at Unit A, number 10. Let's see if we. Oh, there's nothing. It won't zoom in. Ambassador Way. Don't have any listing for the Midwest, or what was it? Something Water Alliance or whatever it was. You've got a couple of other businesses that appear to be in here, but nothing to indicate that there's anything related to water or Kenya or the service of needy individuals. Total garbage. All right, you guys, we're going to go ahead and call it. If you want to hang out with me later tonight, I'll be on Onlylands on Badlands at 10:30. Otherwise, I will see you guys right back here Monday at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. In the meantime, let me just remind you about all of the final sponsors of the show. First of all, my good friends at C60 Evo, c60evo.com/redpill78. They have a huge 40% off sale for the new year that is still going on. Link is in the description below. Get your ESS60. I have an interview with my friends at ESS60. Took a tour of the lab. We're going to be talking about that this weekend. Also, my good friend Mike Lindell at mypillow.com. Use code RP78 to save up to 80% off of all of Mike's amazing American-made products, whether it's the Giza Dream Sheets, the MyPillow 2.0, the towel sets, the slippers, all of it. Great stuff. Lisa and I have it here at the house. We use them every single day. My good friend Jordan over at consciousstrength.net. Use code RP78 or RedPill78 to save 10% off of all of Jordan's amazing American-made products as well. This is where I get my methylene blue. It's a neuroprotective that is a nootropic. It goes through the blood-brain barrier, and it helps with the creation of new neural connections, keeps me sharp and able to discuss all of these things with you guys on a daily basis. Also, my friends over at Richardson Nutrition Center, rncstore.com/RP78. They have many different products. If you are a fan of apricots, you can get your bitter raw apricot seeds and eat those on a daily basis. You can also get fresh bitter apricot seed meal. You can get apricot seed oil for your skin, or you can get their B17. And I would highly suggest you check out all of the interviews that I've done with John Richardson Jr. to learn what you can do with all of that stuff. My friends over here at preparewithredpill78.com, My Patriot Supply, for their Patriot Supply foods in case some unfortunate incident happens and you can't get to the grocery store. Lisa and I have about 5 years of emergency food on hand, and that's no problem. Even if nothing ever happens, it's good for the next 25 years. So check it out. Thank you very much for being here. I will go ahead and pass out all of the gold pills, and then I will send you to another show with a raid. All right, Scratchin' has been released, and we will see you guys next time. Peace. Oh, yeah, and don't forget to hit the like button. Hit the like button, hit the thumbs up, whatever it might be. Thank you, guys. I'm going to send you guys over to Why We Vote with Ash and CanCon. Make sure you say hello for me.